Story 1. After my sister stole my boyfriend again, I turned to the man she had secretly loved for 5 years. Geneva had always treated me as her rival. Toys, dresses, attention, and, most importantly, finally free to date men. Once, she looked me straight in the eyes and smiled. "What can I do, Elena? No man around you can resist me." I laughed and hugged the only man she couldn't have, Mateo Morales. She had broken up with Adam as if he meant nothing. "We only dated for a month," she said, stirring her milkshake. "Isn't that normal?" I sipped my coffee. "You sent me those photos and called it true love." She didn't even blink. "Adam was never really mine. Handsome, brilliant, rich, he used me as a shield to keep other girls away. Our relationship went public one day before she took him. Geneva didn't want him. She just wanted to take what was mine. So I changed the game. My taste wasn't very good before, I told her. But this time, I found someone exceptional. She raised an eyebrow. When exactly? The moment she saw him. I saw that look in her eyes, but Mateo only looked at me. We left together. He walked me to the basketball court where he had a game. I sat on the sideline holding his jacket. Mateo wasn't just charming. He was bold, protective, real. I had admired him since freshman year when he stopped a guy who was harassing a girl. Without hesitation, I made my way into his world slowly. By sophomore year, we were texting often. Everything changed. When I pretended to date Adam, Mateo got jealous, trembling voice, red eyes. He cornered me and asked why I had chosen someone else. That night, the wall between us broke down. Since then, he had been the perfect boyfriend. Even my roommate said so. But deep down, I feared one thing, Geneva. She started showing up more once I found her outside waiting with him. Mateo stayed polite, but I noticed he then invited me to dinner and told me to bring her. I knew what she was doing, so I brought him. She wore a red miniskirt, low neckline, and perfect waves in her hair. Mateo purred. "I heard you're incredible at basketball. Can you teach me?" He shrugged. "If you want to learn, hire a coach." She leaned closer. "Why hire one when my sister's boyfriend is here?" Mateo's expression didn't change. "And don't forget, I'm her boyfriend. Let's avoid misunderstandings." For the first time, Geneva's smile cracked. I stirred my soup, amused. A few minutes later, I dropped my chopsticks on purpose. As I bent down to pick them up, I saw it. Her foot was still there between his legs, and Mateo hadn't moved. My heart sank. He either didn't notice or didn't care. That night, I could barely sleep. The image of Geneva's foot between Mateo's legs repeated in my mind like a broken record. Worse than what I saw was what I didn't see. No reaction from him. Not a start, not a movement, not a trace of discomfort. He just sat there. The next morning, Mateo greeted me with his usual warmth, arms around my waist, lips brushing my forehead. He acted as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't get it out of my head. That moment was now a splinter stuck under my skin. I needed answers. Later that day, we sat on the campus lawn, the sun casting dappled light through the trees. Mateo handed me a water bottle and smiled. "Mateo," I asked cautiously, "do you think Geneva is attractive?" He laughed softly. "Is this a trap? Just answer." He thought for a second. "I mean, sure, she's objectively pretty, but so are many people." "Why?" "She flirts with you," I said dryly. "You know that, right?" He frowned. "Like how?" I blinked. "Do you really not notice?" "No," he said. "Because I only see you. Sweet. Simple. But my instincts wouldn't quiet down." 3 days later, Geneva showed up at my apartment uninvited. As always. She made herself a smoothie in my kitchen as if she owned the place and asked if Mateo would come. "Maybe," I said. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, good. I wanted to ask him something about that game last week. You know, that jump he made." "Wow." I nodded, unimpressed. "You seem very interested." "I like talent," she said with a wink. "Especially when it's so pure." That night, Mateo came. We watched a movie, but I was distant. He noticed. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing," I lied. But he paused the movie. You've been cold since dinner at your sister's, he said. Talk to me. I stared at him. You didn't move your leg. He blinked. What? Geneva's foot was between your legs under the table, and you didn't move for a second. His face went blank. It was only a second. But for me it was enough. Are you serious? He asked as if I was exaggerating, as if it was something crazy in my head. Except it wasn't. I saw it. I felt it. I remembered the way she looked at him and how he didn't pull his foot away. How he continued with that calm expression as if nothing had happened. And now he wanted to make me believe it was my paranoia. I can't believe you're going to pretend you don't remember, I replied with a sick stomach. I didn't feel anything, Elena. Maybe she brushed against me accidentally. I don't know. Do you really want to turn this into a problem? His voice, which was normally calm, now had an impatient tone, as if I were the burden of the story. It wasn't accidental, I said firmly. You know it wasn't. You just don't want to admit you liked it. Matteo snorted and got up from the couch. He paced around the room, scratching his neck as if I were a child having a tantrum. Geneva is your sister, Elena. Why would she do that? Seriously? Because she's obsessed with everything that's mine. And you're mine. He looked me in the eyes. And for a second I swear I saw something break there. As if he didn't want to do it. As if he was tired of the possession, the demands, the dispute. Maybe that's the problem, he murmured. What? That you're mine. I'm not a prize between you two. You two live fighting, competing, attacking each other. And I'm in the middle of all this, trying to maintain sanity. I didn't expect to hear that. It hurt. But worse than hurting, it outraged me. So, you're telling me it's exhausting to be in the middle of my war with Geneva? But you did absolutely nothing to prevent her from provoking you. Nothing. Not even moving her damn foot away. I didn't realize, Elena, he yelled, finally losing his composure. I was trying to focus on dinner, not analyzing every movement under the table. My eyes filled with tears, not because he yelled, but because he didn't understand. Because he didn't want to understand. Because deep down I knew he had felt it. And worse, that it didn't bother him. That night, we slept in the same bed, but in different worlds. Me on my back with my heart in pieces, him breathing deeply, trying to force a sleep that wouldn't come. And so it continued for days, the tension, the silence, the distance, until a week later, Geneva sent me a photo, a selfie wearing Matteo's basketball team uniform. The caption, I loved trying it on. Fits me perfectly. No context, no explanation, just the provocation, pure and raw. My blood boiled. I climbed the stairs to Matteo's apartment as if I were possessed. When he opened the door, he already knew something was wrong. Was she here? I asked, showing the photo. He opened his eyes wide. What are you talking about? What am I talking about? Your room, your shirt, your omission. What did she do here, Matteo? She came to drop off a book you forgot at your mother's house, he said too quickly. I didn't even really let her in. I just took it and thanked her. Then why was she wearing your shirt? I don't know. You don't know? I screamed. Do you think I'm stupid? That I'm naive? You're lying to my face, Matteo. I swear I didn't do anything. You're acting like I betrayed you. And didn't you betray me? Because honestly, between betraying with the body and betraying with silence, with looks, with passivity, do you know what hurts more? Knowing that you did nothing to protect me from her. He was speechless for the first time. Truly speechless. And that's when I understood. He didn't stop her because he didn't want to. That night I didn't cry. For the first time in many months, I didn't cry over him. Instead, I wrote. I wrote what she had done with Adam. I wrote what she had done to me. I wrote everything with dates, screenshots, conversations, stories. I made a complete file. No filters, no mercy. And then I went to find Adam. He received me with a cynical smile, as if he already knew the reason. But when I showed him everything, he changed. Matteo, right? He said with a cold look. Then let's see how much he can handle when the pressure is directed at him. The following week, Geneva lost her skating club sponsorship. Someone sent a compilation of her disgusting comments about other athletes, the forced flirting, and videos where she said she only approached rich guys. Adam started dating one of Geneva's friends and made sure to post photos in every place he had gone with her before. And Mateo was invited to give a talk about ethics and teamwork. I, with my fake profile, sent screenshots of his conversations with Geneva the same day, making it seem like all of that was a trap planned by both of them. The talk was cancelled. At the end of the week, he came looking for me. "Why, Elena? Why do this to me?" I smiled. "Because I got tired of being the idiot of the story." He stood there in front of me with slumped shoulders and wounded pride. He wore that gray jacket he always lent me when I was cold, but which now seemed too heavy for him. He was pale, as if he had finally understood that he wasn't immune to consequences, and that I was no longer the foolish girl who always gave the benefit of the doubt. "You destroyed my reputation, Elena," he said, almost like a plea for help. "No," I replied. "You destroyed that yourself when you chose not to take a position, when you preferred the convenience of silence to loyalty. I just revealed the truth." He ran his hand over his face as if he wanted to erase what he had said. "You'll never understand what it's like to be in the middle of you two. Don't compare me to her," I shot back. "I never played dirty. I never dressed provocatively just to get your attention. I never invaded her space. I just loved you, Mateo. Really, it's just that for you was never enough because deep down you liked her attention. You liked being desired by both of us." He didn't respond, and that silence confirmed everything I already knew. I walked away. I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I just closed it with the calm of someone who, for the first time, had control. In the following days, the entire campus seemed to breathe my story. Someone shared a thread on the faculty forum with screenshots from my file, the same one I sent to the basketball team coordinator, to the scholarship athletes group, to everyone who was part of Mateo Morales' perfect image, the one who called himself upright, faithful, exemplary. The truth was that he liked my sister's attention. He responded to flirtations with ambiguous smiles. He didn't say yes, but he also never said no. And when the situation escalated, he simply pretended nothing had happened, as if being passive was synonymous with innocent, but it wasn't. Geneva got furious. She started posting indirect messages on social media trying to play the victim. "Envious people trying to ruin my career. I feel sorry for those who live in the shadow of others." And, of course, the classic, "Women who compete for small men deserve crumbs." She wanted to play with me. She didn't know I was just getting started. I contacted one of the city's gossip bloggers, one of those who loved exposing the behind-the-scenes of athletes and young influencers. I sent the material. I offered audios, photos, and as the cherry on top, I sent a video of Geneva provoking Adam at an old party while she was still dating another guy. The video had never come to public light, but now it was in the right place. 3 days later, Geneva's name became a local trending topic. People started commenting on the behind-the-scenes of the skating world. How she humiliated colleagues, how she used relationships as a social ladder, how she mistreated employees and rivals with the same sweet smile she used with the press. And Mateo, he tried to apologize again. He sent flowers. He wrote letters. He showed up at my apartment door with a box full of our memories. Movie tickets, old letters, a blouse of mine he kept. But it was already too late. "You're only sorry because everything fell apart," I said firmly. "If no one had discovered anything, you'd still be by her side pretending you don't see anything. And that's worse than betrayal. That's cowardice." He cried. For the first time, he really cried. And that strangely didn't move me. It only gave me even more certainty that I was on the right path. Little by little, my life began to change. Pain gave way to focus. I started dedicating myself more to my thesis project. I resumed my scientific initiation scholarship. I joined the faculty debate team. People started seeing me with different eyes. No longer as Geneva's sister or Mateo's girlfriend. I was Elena, the girl who was betrayed, but who got up. The girl who didn't forgive what was unforgivable. And when I was called to represent the university at an international young leaders event, guess who appeared in my DMs? "Adam, congratulations. I always knew you were stronger than all of us combined." I replied with a simple thank you because I no longer needed approval, much less his. What I needed now was to finish what I started. Geneva was still the darling among some sponsors who wanted to clean up her image, but I knew she had skeletons in the closet. And now, with my new circle of contacts, I had access to files I never would have had before, including an old silence case with a married coach. But I'll tell that part later because the game was still in progress and this time she was going to lose everything. I knew that if I wanted to bring down Geneva once and for all, I would need to be meticulous. It wasn't enough to expose public scandals. She was a master at weathering crises with trained charisma. The fake tear at the right moment, the speech about pressures of the competitive world and youthful mistakes. What I needed was to take away what sustained her most. The prestige behind the scenes, the open doors, the people who still bet on her. And that's how I started working in silence. Through the Young Leaders event, I met journalists, business people, former athletes, and over time, some people who had already heard her name, and not with admiration. One of them, a former member of Geneva's skating team, wrote to me. I accepted. We agreed to meet. She was a girl named Letitia, now working outside the country. She showed up with a flash drive and a crumpled cardboard box. Inside, there were old notes, training records, and a worn notebook. She destroyed my career, Letitia said with her eyes fixed on mine. She pushed me during training. I fell. I tore my ligament. They said it was an accident, but she laughed afterward. I never forgot. The video of the fall was on the flash drive. The camera didn't capture Geneva's face, but it showed her trajectory crossing in front of Letitia, suspiciously just when she was starting the maneuver. In the background, a muffled laugh, familiar, hers. Letitia had never used this for fear of being labeled as envious or suffering retaliation. But now, seeing everything I had already done, she decided to trust me. I took the material, thanked her, and stored it carefully. But I wasn't going to publish it. Not yet. I needed something more impactful, something definitive that would close doors once and for all. And that's where the coach came in. I remember that years ago, my mother discovered that Geneva was receiving special treatments from a club coach. At that time, she denied everything. Of course, she said it was envy, that they wanted to harm her. But there were whispers, strange looks, and even once when I saw him touching her shoulder in a way that was too intimate to be just professional. Now, with my new network of contacts, I went after him. Took time, but I found the man. He was away from the sports scene, divorced and living in another city, and to my surprise, willing to talk. She was a minor at the time, Elena, he said with his head down. But she manipulated me as if she were 30 years old. I know that doesn't exempt me from anything. I was wrong. She knew what she was doing, but I was the adult and I failed. Everything was silenced by an agreement. He showed me the contract. It was a kind of amicable termination with a confidentiality clause signed by the club's board. I took photos. I recorded his testimony. I saved everything but still didn't move any pieces. Meanwhile, Geneva posted photos smiling in expensive cafes, feigning a peace that didn't match someone who a week earlier was screaming at me over the phone, saying, "You'll never reach my level, Elena. Never." Matteo, for his part, disappeared. He vanished from social media, from campus, from social circles. I heard rumors that he was depressed, that he lost his scholarship, that he was removed from the basketball team after the public exposure. I wasn't happy about that, but I didn't feel sorry either. He chose his side, and his silence was the final blow. That's when the perfect opportunity arose. An independent documentary about psychological abuse and toxic competitiveness in youth sports. I sent an anonymous proposal. I wrote a neutral but compelling account. I included fragments from Letitia's interview, images from the fall video, the coach's testimony. They accepted it. The documentary came out 2 months later. No names were directly cited, but anyone who knew the scene knew exactly who it was about. The reaction was devastating. Brands started distancing themselves from Geneva, first discreetly, then openly. The club where she trained issued a statement saying they would open an internal investigation into former coaches. The Skating Federation announced a reevaluation of medals won by athletes involved in unsporting conduct. And although her name wasn't officially mentioned, Geneva's silence She who had always been so vocal and full of opinions, screamed louder than any words. She tried to deny it. She posted videos saying it was the result of structural machismo, that strong women were always attacked. But no one believed her because now former teammates started speaking up. One by one, they appeared in the comments, in stories, in interviews, all with similar stories. Unfair competition, sabotage, insults, humiliations disguised as jokes, and, of course, emotional manipulation. Geneva went in a few days from youth idol to persona non grata. And me? I just watched. I ate my toast with jam. I studied. I lived. I rebuilt myself. And for the first time in years, I breathed without fear. She had taken so much from me. Friends, relationships, self-esteem. But she couldn't take my truth or my strength. And now everything she built on lies was crumbling like a sandcastle before the tide of reality. And I was the wave. When I saw the photo of her sitting alone in the back of a cafe, wearing a cap to hide her face and the dark glasses she once proudly displayed in shop windows, I knew Geneva was broken. Not in body nor in style, because she always had vanity in abundance, but broken where it hurt most. In pride. The laughter disappeared. The invitations evaporated. The brands that once knelt at her feet now pretended she never existed. She still tried to stay active on social media, but the comments were relentless. How many falls did you cause to get to that position? I knew there was something wrong with that angel face. Queen of manipulation. Worse than Matteo's silence was your arrogance. And it was in that silence that he too was sinking. I learned from a mutual friend that Matteo had moved back in with his parents. His father treated him like a failure. His mother cried every day saying it was just a phase. He didn't want to leave the house. He rejected invitations. He deleted all his Instagram photos. He disappeared. Sometimes I confess I wondered if all this was too much, if I had gone too far. But then I remembered all the nights I spent crying while the two of them surrounded themselves with secrets and cynicism. I remembered the pain of seeing my sister laughing at my suffering while using my boyfriend as a war trophy. I remembered Matteo's look when he said that maybe the problem was me. No, I hadn't gone too far. They never thought someone like me would have the courage to go anywhere. And I went. I went beyond pain. I went beyond resentment. I went beyond the role they wrote for me. The overshadowed sister, the shadow, the one who swallows quietly. This time I was the protagonist. And more than that, I still had one final card. Because while everyone judged Geneva for what they saw in the documentary, there was a story no one knew. One I saved until the right moment. And that moment came when, during a forced press conference, she decided to cry. I made mistakes. Everyone makes them. But I'm being judged by rumors, by envy, by women who can't stand to see another woman shine. That was the spark. I took my phone. I opened the video and I posted it. It was old. A recording made by Adam without her knowing at one of the parties where he tried to break up with her. In the video, Geneva said, "Do you really think I liked you? I just wanted to see Elena's face when she found out. She's always been pathetic. She crawls for crumbs. At least now she knows what it's like to lose." In less than 20 minutes, the video had exploded. It wasn't about sports. It wasn't about beauty. It was about character. It was about confessing that she destroyed another person on purpose for pleasure, for envy, for pure sadism. And this time, not even the Instagram feminists could defend her because their naked and raw was the truth. Geneva never wanted justice. She was never a victim. She was the weapon. And now she was drowning in her own poison. In the following days, I received hundreds of messages. Some called me brave, others cruel. I didn't respond to any of them because the truth is I didn't do this for applause. I did it for me, for all the times I was silenced, diminished, betrayed by those who claimed to love me. And in the midst of all this, there was a curious moment. Matteo called me. I didn't answer at the time. I let it go to voicemail. And when I listened to the recording, my heart almost wavered. "Elena, I know you probably hate me, and rightfully so. But I need to say that despite everything, you made me see who I had become. I let things happen. I was weak. And in the end, I lost you. I lost everything. But I wanted you to know that even though I don't deserve it, I still love you. I turned off the audio with steady hands. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. I didn't save the number because at that moment I understood that he didn't love me. He loved the version of Elena who accepted everything quietly. The one who waited on the sideline with the jacket in hand. The one who smiled while being slowly erased. And that Elena no longer exists. Days passed and the dust didn't settle. If Geneva thought the internet would forget quickly, she was completely wrong. The video continued circulating now with analysis on opinion channels, podcasts commenting on the emotional manipulation she imposed on me, and even a viral thread called How to Destroy Your Sister in 5 Steps, a case study on Geneva. It seems cruel, and it was, but it was the exact reflection of what she did to me for years. Only this time, there was nowhere to hide. She tried to disappear. She disappeared from social media. She disabled comments. She stayed away from social events. But when you build your identity on top of a public image, silence becomes a scream. Brands rescinded contracts. Clubs denied reintegration. Even colleagues who previously defended her now just wanted distance. And that's when the most ironic thing of all began. She tried to approach me. Yes, the same Geneva who said I was pathetic, who laughed at my pain, who stole my boyfriends like someone collecting trophies. She showed up at my apartment door. She didn't knock. She didn't send a message first. She just appeared. I opened the door and she was there with a dejected face, swollen eyes, hair pulled back carelessly. A sloppiness unthinkable for someone who always made appearance a shield. She had a bag with muffins, as if that would erase everything. "Elena, we need to talk," she said in a low voice. I stayed silent for a few seconds. I felt a part of me wanting to explode, to throw every humiliation in her face. But I controlled myself because at that moment, she wasn't a threat. She was a shadow of what she was. And me, I was light. "Come in. 5 minutes," I said. She sat on the edge of the sofa as if she were stepping on broken glass. She looked around, noticing the plants I grew myself, the paintings I hung, the pieces she could never steal. I wanted to apologize," she began. I laughed without humor. "Apologize or clean up your image?" "I deserve it," she said, looking at the floor. "I know, but I'm alone, Elena. Really, everyone turned their backs on me. No one wants to listen to me. And even after everything, I thought that maybe you could still understand me." That word, understand, it pierced me. "You used me as a mirror your whole life, Geneva. You imitated me. You surpassed me. You hurt me. And now you come here after everything, wanting understanding." She didn't respond. Her eyes filled with tears. But I wasn't moved because her crying never meant repentance. It was always strategy. You don't feel guilt, Geneva. You feel shame. And it's not the same thing. She bit her lips, defeated. But not even that broke my shield. "I don't take pleasure in seeing you like this," I continued. "But I'm also not going to pretend I didn't expect this moment because for years I wanted justice. Just that. And now it arrived." She got up. She left the bag on the table. "I just wanted to be your sister again." "You never were," I responded before she crossed the door. She turned around and for the first time in her life, she had no answer. The following week, I received an internship proposal at a major publishing house. They chose me after reading my published article about psychological manipulation among women in the sports environment. Text I wrote based on my own experience. It was symbolic. Around the same time, I learned that Matteo was working at a sporting goods store. Someone told me he had tried to return to the faculty team, but sponsors refused. Now he spent his days folding shirts, organizing basketballs, and avoiding curious looks from those who once idolized him. And me? I was well for the first time, truly well. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need to compete for love. I didn't need to erase myself to fit into spaces that were never made for me. One Sunday morning, I received a call. It was Adam. "I just wanted to say I'm leaving the city. I started working in sports consulting in another region. But before leaving, I wanted to thank you." "Why?" I asked, surprised. Because you showed me we don't need to accept the role they give us. You didn't just get revenge for yourself. You saved many people from Geneva's poison, including me. I smiled. He hung up, and in that silence after the call, I felt something inside me settle. The pain passed. The anger, too. What remained was the certainty that I survived. And more than that, I won. But most importantly, I would never again allow anyone to decide my worth based on their convenience. I am Elena, and no one erases my name. Life has always moved forward, not in a hurry, but with firmness. The faculty hallways, which were once stages of my insecurities, had now become the stage of my freedom. People greeted me genuinely. Teachers called me by my name, and I no longer walked with hunched shoulders. I had become the owner of myself again. One morning, while crossing the courtyard with my notebook in hand and headphones on, I received a message that made me stop in the middle of the path. It was from the Academic Center coordinator. Elena, you've been nominated to represent the university at the International Congress in Lisbon. Your article was one of the best evaluated. I sat on a stone bench under a tree and stared at the screen for a while. This was it. There was the definitive proof that everything was worth it, that I didn't need to compete with anyone, nor reduce myself to fit in anyone's shadows. I went home with a warm heart. I called my mother, who knew almost nothing about what had happened in recent months. She cried with emotion. She said she was proud of me, something I had waited years to hear. I didn't know if she knew about everything. Maybe she had pretended not to know. Maybe she was trying to save the little bond we had left after so much favoritism given to Geneva during childhood. But at that moment, I didn't want to look back. And speaking of Geneva, she reappeared. Not physically, but in a news story, former skater Geneva F. Seen serving tables at popular chain restaurant after scandal. The headline came with a blurry photo. Her with hair pulled back in a loose bun, apron stained with sauce, looking sideways like someone who wanted to be invisible. I didn't feel pleasure, but I didn't feel pity either. It was ironic. She who mocked my simple style now needed to wear a uniform. She who scoffed at my choice to study and dedicate myself was now ignored by all those who once knelt at her feet. Her fall wasn't quick. It was gradual and therefore harder. Little by little, she was left aside by everyone who once pretended to be her friends. Because whoever conquers everything with charm and manipulation loses everything when the charm ends. I didn't tell anyone I saw the news. I just saved the image. Not to use it against her, but as a reminder, karma isn't always noisy. Sometimes it whispers, and it whispers for a long time. Before boarding to the Congress, I organized a small farewell with my closest friends. We sat in a circle. We listened to music. We laughed at past stories. No one mentioned Geneva. No one mentioned Matteo, and that by itself was already liberating. In a moment of silence, a friend asked me, Elena, after everything, do you regret it? I looked at the glass of juice in my hand. I thought for a few seconds. I don't regret what I did. I regret the time it took me to understand who I was, to realize that I didn't need anyone's approval, that it was enough to believe in myself. She smiled. She hugged me. On the morning of the flight, I got up early. I packed my suitcase, put on my university credential, and went down the building stairs with a smile on my face. While waiting for the taxi, I felt such great peace that it was almost strange. It was as if all the knots had come undone, as if finally this story had reached its end. Not the way I planned when I was lying in bed with my eyes burning from crying so much, but the way it should be, with justice, with truth, with growth. And there inside the plane, looking at the clouds through the window, I promised myself, I will never be small again to fit into anyone's life. I will never again allow love to come accompanied by humiliation. I will never again let them silence me. Because now I was Elena, whole, strong, unforgettable, and, most importantly, finally free. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My sister-in-law didn't let my children use the family pool all summer, saying they were annoying. So we built a pool in our backyard for everyone. When my mother-in-law saw all the kids, she was shocked, and my sister-in-law went pale. No, Letitia, I already told you today isn't a good day to swim. Amanda's voice dripped with false sweetness over the phone. Hammy and Sophia need their private time in the pool. You understand, right? Maybe you can go to the public pool. I gripped the phone tighter, seeing the disappointment on my children's faces as they overheard their aunt's rejection. It was the hottest day of the summer, and my 7-year-old twins, Leah and Lucas, had been begging all week to use the family pool. Amanda, it's 35 degrees out, I said, trying to stay calm. The public pool is crowded, and the kids haven't been able to swim at your house all summer. They're your niece and nephew. Well, if you had taught them to be quieter, maybe they could come more often. Jamie and Sophia need peace and quiet. They're training for the youth swim team, you know. Of course, I knew. It was all Amanda talked about lately. Her precious 12-year-olds were, according to her, future Olympic champions who couldn't be bothered by their little cousins splashing around. I hung up and turned to my disappointed twins. Leah's lower lip was trembling while Lucas kicked at the ground, both still in the swimsuits they had hopefully put on that morning. I'm sorry, my loves, I said, hugging them. How about we get some ice cream instead? It's not fair, Mom, Lucas mumbled against my shirt. Why doesn't Aunt Amanda like us? It broke my heart. It wasn't the first time Amanda excluded my kids, but seeing their sad little faces never stopped hurting. Ever since she moved into her new house with the huge pool last year, she had turned what should have been a fun family space into her personal kingdom. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on our back porch, staring out at the large backyard. My husband, Miguel, found me there with 2 glasses of wine in hand. Tough day? He asked, sitting beside me. Amanda turned us down again, I sighed, accepting the wine. I don't get it, Miguel. When did she become so exclusive? We all grew up swimming in that pool at your parents' house. Now she acts like it's a private club. Miguel took a thoughtful sip. You know, I've been thinking this yard is pretty big. I turned to look at him, raising an eyebrow. What are you suggesting? He smiled. Maybe I did a little research. Above-ground pools have come a long way. And with some construction, we could do something really special. Not just for us, but for other families, too. I've noticed we're not the only ones Amanda's excluded. Remember Sarah from the corner house? Her kids aren't welcome either. Neither are the Thompson twins. I straightened, ideas starting to form. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Community pool. Nothing fancy, but a place where all the kids can swim, safe, supervised, inclusive. I looked at our yard with fresh eyes. The space that had always seemed too big suddenly felt full of possibility. It'd be a lot of work. I've got some savings, Miguel said, and I bet if we reach out to other families, they'll want to help. We can create something truly special here, Lisa. Something that brings people together rather than tearing them apart. As we planned, sitting there, I felt my excitement growing. This could be more than a pool. It could be a statement about the type of community we wanted to build. The next morning, I started making calls. Sarah was enthusiastic right away and offered to help with permits and paperwork since she worked at City Hall. The Thompsons, both teachers, offered to organize a schedule and safety protocols. Other neighbors offered materials, labor, and funds. Within weeks, our yard was transformed. Miguel led the construction, teaching neighbors basic building skills while they worked. Our backyard became a hub of activity with people coming by every day to help or just see the progress. The kids were fascinated. Leah and Lucas dubbed themselves the official construction helpers, proudly wearing the little hard hats Miguel got them. They spent hours watching the pool take shape, their disappointment over Amanda's rejection slowly turning into excitement over what was coming. One Saturday morning, while volunteers worked on the deck, I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned to see my mother standing there looking confused. She clearly hadn't heard the news of the project. "Hi, Mom," I said, getting up from where I'd been staining some boards. "We're building a pool, a community pool actually, so that all the kids can enjoy it." She looked around, taking in the scene. Neighbors working together, kids playing nearby, and the sense of community that was already forming. "But why? Amanda has a perfectly good pool." "Does she really?" I asked quietly. "Because from where I stand, A pool that excludes family doesn't seem perfectly good at all. Mom stayed silent, watching Leah and Lucas run around with lemonade for the workers, brimming with pride over their contribution. They look happy, she finally said. Are they? This is more than swimming, Mom. It's about creating a place where everyone feels welcome, where no kid has to feel rejected or left out. Seeing the realization in her eyes, I knew this project was already accomplishing exactly what we'd hoped. It wasn't just about building a pool. It was about building ties, tearing down walls, and showing the world we were here. Lisa, you won't believe what just happened. Practically jumping with excitement, Sarah came running over. I was at City Hall getting the permits, and the Parks and Recreation Director overheard me talking about our project. He loved the idea. They want to feature us in the community newsletter as an example of neighborhood unity. I smiled, thinking how different this was from Amanda's exclusive attitude. Our pool wasn't even finished, yet it was already bringing people together. Physically, the transformation of our backyard was striking. Miguel's design included a large L-shaped pool with a shallow area perfect for the little ones. The deck around it was wide enough for families to set up chairs and umbrellas. We added storage compartments for toys and safety equipment, and the Thompsons organized a volunteer schedule for supervision. Leah and Lucas became the project's unofficial welcome committee. They set up a little stand to serve lemonade to the workers and kept a progress journal with photos and daily notes on what was accomplished. Mom, look, Leah shouted one afternoon, holding up her journal. We got 10 more signatures. Now we have 30 families who want to join our pool club. Pool club. That was how they referred to the informal community group we'd formed to manage the space. Unlike Amanda's exclusive approach, our only requirements were following safety rules and taking turns helping with maintenance. But not everyone was thrilled about our project. One evening, as Miguel and I were going over the final details before filling the pool, we heard the unmistakable sound of Amanda's truck pulling into our driveway. "What do you think you're doing?" she exclaimed, storming into our backyard without an invitation. "Mom told me about this public puddle you're building." Her voice slashed through the air like a razor blade, cutting off the sound of tools and laughter. Everyone in the yard, Sarah, the Thompsons, even the small group of kids playing with water guns, turned at the same time. Miguel put down the drill. I slowly stood up from where I had been arranging the inflatable toys that Lucas and Leah had left in a corner. Amanda hopped down from her truck like she was walking into a courtroom to deliver a verdict. Her sunglasses were perched in her blonde hair like an invisible crown, and she wore a white blouse that was definitely not meant for dusty or cement-filled settings. "We didn't know we needed your permission to use our own yard," Miguel said, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm talking to Lisa." "Thank you," Amanda snapped, turning to me with that stretched smile she wore when she was about to be unpleasant. I said nothing. I waited. I knew she hated that. "Mom told me about this eyesore," she said, pointing at the pool. "A community project." "Seriously, Lisa, now you're pretending to be some kind of neighborhood saint. You yourself said my kids bothered yours," I said quietly, even though my heart was pounding. "I figured we'd all be happier this way." "Some distance," she snorted. "You completely misunderstood. I said Hammy and Sophia need focus. They have goals. They can't be listening to screaming all the time. You know what it's like to have normal kids, not prodigies." I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. Sarah and the Thompsons exchanged glances. Hammy and Sophia were behind the fence, watching silently. Amanda didn't notice. "And you really think this is the solution?" she continued. "You're making yourself look pathetic, gathering all these envious people just because they can't have something of their own. It's like a socialist commune." She spat out the word socialist as if it were a curse. "Funny," I murmured, "because your dad paid for your pool and it was built over your mom's garden. So technically I take care of that pool. I organize it, clean it, I manage the schedule. You think that's easy? You use it to exclude children?" I answered, still calm. "And now you're upset because we've created a space where they're welcome." Amanda stepped forward, eyes flashing. "You've always wanted to compete with me ever since I joined this family." always trying to seem nicer, more understanding. But deep down, you're bitter jealous. She spun around, arms wide. A circus in the backyard. Thinking you'll teach me a lesson. It's not about you, Amanda. It never was. Of course it is, she snapped, and for a moment the mask fell. Her voice boomed too loud. Some people in the yard moved closer, pretending to keep working, but listening carefully. You built this just to defy me, and you'll see how this ends. Disorganized kids, accidents, yelling, and you'll foot the bill when it all goes wrong. That was when Leah's little voice cut through the silence. But Mommy says, we don't fight with people who yell. We just show them how to do better. Amanda froze. Leah was standing by Sarah, holding a cup of lemonade, gazing at her aunt with the brutal frankness of a child who doesn't grasp sarcasm. I bent down, straightened Leah's swimsuit strap, and smiled gently. Well remembered, my love. Sometimes the best way to prove we're right is to let the other person keep talking. Miguel approached, voice low but firm. Amanda, you're embarrassing yourself. Enough. There's no going back. The pool will open next week. With or without your blessing. She looked at him as if he'd betrayed her, as though Miguel had committed some unforgivable blasphemy. So that's it? You're taking her side? Your hysterical wife who builds suburban playgrounds to look like the charity queen. Silence. Miguel merely crossed his arms. I'm on Lisa's side, he said, because she's doing what you never could. Uniting the family. A whistle rang out from somewhere. Someone clapped. Amanda spun around, red-faced, as if finally noticing that everyone was listening. Some people pretended to busy themselves. Others didn't even try to hide it. She stepped back, unsteady, her mouth open to respond, but nothing came out. Just a muffled sound, as if her pride had gotten stuck in her throat. If you ever want to come swim, Amanda, you're welcome, I said at last. Everyone is. Then, calmly, I went back to placing the floaties at the edge of the pool. Amanda hesitated for a moment, looking around, maybe realizing for the first time that she was alone, that her presence no longer caused embarrassment, only pity. She spun abruptly, got in her truck, and sped off as though fleeing would erase everything that had been said. But it didn't, and that evening, when the last rays of sun shone on the still chlorine-free water of our freshly filled pool, I heard Sarah laugh softly and say, that was better than any primetime soap opera. The following week was quieter than usual, the calm before the storm. Amanda didn't show up. No messages in the family group chat. No calls, not even a hint on Facebook, which from her was beyond suspicious. But what really set off my alarm was my mother-in-law's sudden change of tone. Lisa, dear, she said on the phone, are you sure this pool is safe? I was taping one of the volunteer schedule posters to the side of the storage shed with Lucas helping me with the tape. Why do you ask, Mama? Well, it's just that Amanda said maybe it's not all up to code. That the children might get hurt, and she heard some neighbors are worried about the noise. Heard from whom exactly? I asked slowly. I don't know, sweetie. I'm just repeating what I heard. Sure. I thanked her, hung up, and paused, gazing at the yard. Everything was impeccable. The protective fence, the depth markers, the children's life vests hanging up, the first aid kit. The Thompsons were strict about protocols. They even bought a referee whistle to supervise swim times. Still, Amanda was already sowing poison. That night, Miguel came home from work wearing an expression I knew well. Something had happened. I ran into Mr. Galvin at the little market. He mentioned the pool. Said he heard we're charging people to get in. Charging? I laughed out loud. Where did that come from? Guess. I leaned back against the counter and took a deep breath. Amanda was starting her smear campaign. Predictable, but still infuriating. The next morning, I went to Sarah's house with a cake and a plan. Ready to launch the counterattack? She asked, laughing as she sliced a piece. I prefer to call it damage control. Together, we spent the day putting together a printed community pool guide, complete with a schedule, rules, first aid kit list, volunteer supervisor names, and emergency contacts. We also included a letter signed by 15 neighbors attesting to their involvement and support for the project. We handed them out to mailboxes with the kids' help, who were overjoyed with their secret mission. That night, as Miguel finished installing the solar lights around the pool, Leah ran up with an envelope bearing the City Hall seal. "Mommy, this came for you." I opened it carefully. It was an official notice. "Dear Mrs. Lisa Gonzalez, we have received an anonymous complaint regarding possible irregularities in the pool construction project at your residence. We request that you appear at the Urban Planning Office for clarification and presentation of licenses within 5 business days." My hands went cold. Anonymous complaint. Of course, I didn't tell Miguel, not then. I just smiled at the children and tucked the paper away. The next day, I went to the City Hall with Sarah. I brought every document, the approved plan, the lot layout, environmental permits, even step-by-step construction photos. The woman at the desk was polite, but clearly embarrassed, looking at me apologetically. "This isn't the first complaint we've gotten from the same source," she said quietly. "But it's always anonymous. We're used to it. And no, I asked nothing if everything is in order. And it is. Honestly, your project is exemplary. She sighed. Just be careful with those who feel threatened by it." On the way out, Sarah looked at me, eyebrows raised. 20 pesos says the next complaint goes to the neighborhood council. Amanda will waste all her breath until she drowns in her own venom. I smiled, but inside, I was already planning my next strategy. The atmosphere in the neighborhood was almost festive that Friday. 2 days until the grand opening of the community pool, and the group chat was buzzing. Sarah and the Thompsons started a WhatsApp group that had too many emojis and even more over-the-top ideas: piñata, kids karaoke, a decorated floaty parade. Leah and Lucas made signs with slogans like, "Pools are for everyone," and "No club, no drama," which they taped to the fence. Meanwhile, Miguel rigged up a retractable awning using an old truck tarp and climbing hooks. It was an immediate hit. Then came the call from my mother-in-law. "Lisa, dear, how exciting the inauguration of your little pool. I just wanted to chat so there's no conflict." Conflict? Well, Amanda had such a lovely idea. We're having a little gathering, too, at her house pool. Just family on Sunday, actually, as was our tradition. Tradition. The word sounded fake and turned bitter in my mouth. Amanda had despised every single family gathering we'd held there before it became her pool. "Just family," I repeated carefully. Of course. But you can come by for a while once the neighbors leave." Translation. Amanda was trying to split the guests, making people choose between our popular pool and hers, where she'd prefer not to share space with noisy community kids. I took a deep breath. "It's great that she's opening her pool," I said, forcing a neutral tone. "It'll be nice for the kids." "For some kids, of course," said my mother-in-law and hung up. I checked the pool group chat and confirmed my suspicions. Many mothers had received informal invitations to Amanda's event. Some neighbors were unsure, others were simply curious, but everyone saw it for what it was: an attempt to sabotage our party. "This is sick," Sarah wrote, typing furiously. "She never quits." "We're not going to compete," I replied. "We'll make the choice obvious." That's when we changed the plan. The new plan. Our event would start in the morning with games, music, and a kids' painting workshop. In the afternoon, we'd hold the official pool opening with a symbolic ceremony. Lucas wanted to cut a ribbon with a toy sword, followed by a community lunch of potluck dishes brought by everyone. In the evening, a screen on the lawn with popcorn and a children's movie. Amanda? She had a barbecue with rented inflatable slides and a guest list strictly for blood relatives only. Sunday dawned hot and cloudless. Our pool sparkled. Families began arriving with tables, umbrellas, dishes, and smiles. The Thompson twins brought cupcakes with blue frosting. Sarah prepared a jello shaped like a floating raft. My mom showed up with a big tray of lasagna and a thoughtful look. "I saw the other invitation," she said, not needing to spell it out. "But I'd rather be where my grandchildren are happy." When we cut the red ribbon to the pool with Lucas in a superhero cape, everyone applauded. It felt like a triumph, a sense of unity, a bloodless revenge. Later, while I was serving lemonade, I heard hushed voices near the fence. 3 kids were peeking through the slats on Amanda's side. I recognized one, Haim, my sister-in-law's older son. He stood in silence, watching, maybe noticing how different it felt here. By then, everyone was in the shallow side of the pool, including the parents. Sarah was squirting water from a giant water gun, laughing like a child. Miguel helped Lucas build a water bomb. Leah was explaining the rules of a floaty race to 2 girls from down the street, and then he came over. Haimi climbed up on one of the stones near the short fence, glanced back toward his mother's house, and jumped down to our side. A hush lasted 2 seconds. Then it was as if nothing unusual had happened. The kids welcomed him with cheers of yay, and he quickly fit right in with the others. Only later did I notice Amanda standing behind the fence, arms crossed, face pale and tense. For her, it wasn't just a jump. It was betrayal. She didn't come in, didn't scream or try to stop the moment. Not then. Amanda stood there, unmoving, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on Haimi. He splashed around happily, filling a bucket to toss water with Lucas and 2 other neighbors. After a few seconds, Amanda disappeared from sight. I wondered whether she would swallow it or stir up a storm. I didn't have to wait long. Barely 15 minutes later, we heard the voice. Haim! The shout cracked like a whip, cutting through the air, snuffing out laughter and music, and even the birds. Haimi froze, still with his feet in the pool. Amanda appeared at the edge of the yard but did not come in. She stood behind the fence like a judge calling out a foul line no one should have crossed. Get out of there now. All eyes turned to him. Haimi looked at me, then at Miguel. He didn't ask for help. He just stood up slowly as if waking from a dream and walked to the fence. Amanda yanked open the small gate and grabbed his arm. Too hard to look motherly. What were you thinking? Have you lost your mind? Mom, it was just for a little while, he mumbled. A little while with them after everything I told you? She stared at us like we were zoo animals. I didn't say anything. Neither did Miguel. Only Sarah stirred, taking a step forward, but I discreetly put my arm out to stop her. Let Amanda hang herself. Amanda dragged Haimi back into her yard. A strange silence followed. The water in our pool rippled as if refusing to stay still. Lucas bit his lip. Leah clutched my hand. He didn't do anything wrong, she whispered. I know, sweetheart. The party went on, but it wasn't the same. Amanda's presence loomed like a ghost. Not because she was there, but because everyone had now seen what we'd only suspected before. Her control, her humiliation, her cruelty. By Monday, the story had traveled around the neighborhood. Sarah came over for coffee and brought news. Have you heard about the list? What list? Amanda drew up a code of conduct for any child who wants to hang out with Haimi and Sophia. Parents have to sign it. It's unreal. She pulled out the paper. It was printed with a bolded title, Family Coexistence Rules. Residents Amanda and Company. There were items like no visits without at least 48 hours notice. No water games whatsoever with outside children. Only supervised interaction allowed with cousins under 10. I signed it with a laugh, then set it aside. But that afternoon, Leah came running inside with something in her hands. Mommy, I found this in our mailbox. It was an envelope with no return address. My name scrawled on it. Inside, a folded sheet of paper and a hastily scribbled note. I'm sorry about Sunday. It was fun there. Can I come again? Don't tell her. Jay. I stood still, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. Leah watched me curiously. It's from Haim, right? I nodded, stashing the note in my pocket and kissing her forehead. Later, I went to Miguel's little tool shed and found an old clipboard. I wrote on top, Nighttime Visitor Log. I placed Haim's note underneath. That would be our new tactic. We weren't going to fight Amanda. We'd just leave the door open for anyone who wanted to jump the fence of their own free will. Over the following days, traffic picked up. Started with Haim. Then 2 more cousins showed up at our fence one Tuesday afternoon, peering through the slats. Leah saw them first. Mom, Aunt Amanda's boys are here again. I stepped outside with a pitcher of juice and just smiled. Do you want to come in? They hesitated for a moment, then nodded. One, the younger, pulled pulled off his t-shirt and ran straight to the water. The other was tense, glancing back over his shoulder, but came in as well. From then on, it became a frequent occurrence. Kids who previously weren't allowed to mix would drop by. Some asked permission at the gate. Others showed up alone, backpack in hand with flimsy excuses. I came to return Lucas's toy. My mom said I could just watch. Naturally, Amanda noticed and she didn't like it. On Thursday, Hamey showed up again with a crumpled piece of paper in his pocket and restless eyes. She's mad. Really mad. She said she's really going to report you this time. Report me for what? She says you're manipulating me, that this is dangerous influence. I held my breath for a moment. Then I smiled and offered him a slice of cake. Want extra frosting? The next morning, the threat became real. I got a notice. Amanda had filed an official complaint with the neighborhood council, claiming I was influencing minors without parental consent, and that the community pool is an informal environment without adequate institutional oversight, prone to accidents and deviant behavior. Miguel took the paper from my hands and read it twice in silence. This won't go anywhere, he said. But she's trying to wear you down. She was. The tone of the complaint was like carefully distilled poison. Vaguely moral accusations, phrases like legitimate concern, and alternative environment of difficult regulation. Nothing direct, but everything implied. I went to City Hall with Sarah and Mr. Galvin, a retired lawyer who lived a street over and loved community causes. He read the complaint with a low chuckle. This is a joke, but we have to file a formal reply. She's trying to flip the narrative, I muttered. Exactly, and you're going to flip it even better. We'll show this isn't undue influence. It's outreach. It's solidarity. We drafted a response letter signed by over 30 residents, including photos of events, our safety schedule, and Miguel's own testimony as a father and project coordinator. We added the letter of support from the Municipal Recreation Department, which was already interested in the project. What Amanda didn't expect was who would show up at my door the next morning. I was in the kitchen making sandwiches for the kids when my mother-in-law appeared at the back door. No warning, no flowers, no usual smile. Could we talk? I nodded, drying my hands on a dish towel. She sat at the table as though carrying a heavy burden in her lap. Amanda has gone too far. You know about the lawsuit? She told me she was almost proud of it. But I saw the pictures from Sunday, the videos. Lisa, this, she waved around the yard. It's not dangerous. It's beautiful. It's what's been missing from this family for a long time. So why now? She took a deep breath, looked aside, then back at me. Because last night I heard Haim crying in his room. He said he doesn't want to go back home. My stomach clenched. He said that here, he can breathe. The words hung in the air like bubbles that no one dared to pop. She's pushing too hard, she went on, and I let it happen. I kept quiet when I should have spoken up, but no more. I set down a mug of tea in front of her without a word. The silence between us wasn't hostile anymore. It was a truce. Amanda's letter to the council was officially shelved on Monday morning. The neighborhood council stated they found no evidence of misconduct and that, on the contrary, they congratulated Mrs. Lisa Gonzalez and all volunteers on the initiative. The reaction was immediate. The WhatsApp group for the pool exploded with memes, emojis, and invites for a shelved complaint party. Leah painted a sign reading, "Our pool passed the test." But Amanda didn't. I almost asked her to take it down, but I let it stay. That same day, while I was walking with Sarah to deliver more sign-up forms to new families interested in participating, we noticed something odd. Amanda's house was locked up. No sounds, no sign of Hamey, no car in the driveway. "It's too quiet for a Tuesday," Sarah remarked. "Dangerously quiet," I replied. Amanda disappeared for 3 whole days. 3 days without posts or calls, no drama. Until Friday night. Miguel came home with a new purchase, a small security system with external cameras. Nothing fancy, but enough to monitor around the pool at night. "You never know," he said apologetically. "Just in case we installed the cameras." No one mentioned it further. Then, in the early hours of Saturday morning, around 3:27 a.m., Amanda made her biggest mistake. The footage was clear, her climbing over the side fence with a flashlight and a bag in hand. She wore an old t-shirt and had her hair in a messy bun, so different from her usual polished image. The camera showed her opening the maintenance storage, rummaging through supplies, and then pouring something into the pool filters. What she didn't realize was that Miguel had activated the night alert. The phone rang in my bedroom. I saw the motion alert and opened the video feed. For a second, I thought it was a prank, but it wasn't. I called Miguel, who was working a night shift, and he confirmed it was real. He called the police himself. Amanda was caught by the local patrol while trying to slip out the back fence. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't arrested, but the police report was filed. And by the next day, the whole neighborhood knew. Not from me, but because Jaime posted the footage on his private Instagram account. No sound, just the image of his mother trespassing and sabotaging the pool. His caption: "When your own mom tries to destroy the only place where you feel welcome." The video blew up first on his school's chat, then among neighbors, and finally it reached the neighborhood council, the church group, and my mother-in-law. Sarah called me at 9 in the morning. "Have you seen it? It's everywhere. It's the end." "I didn't post anything," I said. "I know. And that makes it even worse for her. Nobody can accuse you of anything. She dug her own grave." That afternoon, Amanda showed up outside my house. She didn't come in or knock. She just stood on the other side of the street, immobile, staring at the yard filled with people. The kids played as usual. Miguel adjusted the outdoor lighting. Jaime lay on a lounge chair reading a book, pretending not to notice. When our eyes met, she opened her mouth to say something, but stayed silent. She turned and walked away. This time, the fence remained intact, but her reputation did not. We didn't see Amanda for a whole week. No car coming or going, curtains closed, not even a hint of her voice inside the house. A total absence, so complete it felt unreal, like she'd never been there at all, as if the whole drama had been a collective nightmare. But Jaime was here, more and more present and more silent. At first, he pretended everything was fine. He played with Lucas, laughed at Leah's jokes, helped Miguel arrange the lounge chairs. But after a while, small signs appeared. On Tuesday, he refused a snack he always loved. On Wednesday, he slept on the living room couch, claiming, "My room's too hot." On Thursday, he had a small meltdown while we assembled first aid kits for a new group of volunteers. "What if she never talks to me again?" he whispered, holding a roll of tape with trembling hands. "What if she hates me?" The question cut through me like a thin, silent nail. It wasn't fear of punishment. It was fear of abandonment. The anger I felt for Amanda for a moment turned into something else. Not forgiveness, but something deeper. Pity. Not for her, for him. Jaime was paying too high a price. On Friday, my mother-in-law appeared at the gate with a basket of bread and the look of someone trying to stitch together fabric that had been slashed with a razor. "May we talk?" I went over, waiting. "Lisa, I think it's time to settle all this as a family." "Settle?" I repeated. "Amanda's in a really bad place. She's not eating, not leaving her room. She's not herself. This has gone too far. It's time to forgive." The word made me nauseous. Forgive. Forgive what exactly? She tried to sabotage a children's space. She tried to incriminate me. She used her own son as an emotional weapon. And when she lost control, she broke into my property. My voice was steadier than I expected. No shouting, no trembling. "This isn't a family drama, Mama. It's a pattern. And now that she's fallen, you want to brush it away with a little bread and a quick chat. I just want to avoid more pain for Jaime, for all of us." Then start by accepting that not every reconciliation needs a stage. Sometimes the only real healing is distance. She didn't reply, just nodded with teary eyes and went home. That night, Jaime wouldn't eat dinner. He stayed on the backyard swing, staring at the sky with empty eyes. Leah tried to play with him. Lucas invited him to watch a funny video. Nothing worked. I sat beside him. "Do you miss her?" He didn't answer. "I know you do. Why does she do this?" he asked. "Why can't she just be like you?" That caught me off guard. I'm not better than she is, Hammy. I'm just different. But you let us exist. We remained silent for a while. The pool lights reflected off the tree leaves. Soft laughter rose from the far side of the yard. In the early hours, I got up for a glass of water. Through the window, I saw something. A figure standing across the street. Alone, unmoving, watching. Amanda. She stood under the tree we'd planted years ago. Arms crossed, face partly hidden. She didn't try to come in, didn't gesture at all. She stayed there maybe 2 minutes. Then she left. I told no one, but I knew the end was near. Sunday arrived, warm but not stifling. The pool water sparkled, decorated with banners, organized chairs, colorful bowls of fruit. We were unveiling the community plaque. A small ceremony. Leah and Sarah had come up with the plaque. It was simple lightwood, laser-engraved names at the top in larger letters. Los Sau's Neighborhood Community Pool. Because everyone deserves a place. Below that, the names. Lisa, Miguel, Sarah, the Thompsons, then a long list of neighbors, volunteers, and supporters. It was a way to mark a new chapter in the neighborhood. A before and after. The event was set for 4 p.m. At 3:48, Amanda appeared. She wore a light blue jacket, sunglasses, her hair pulled back far too tightly for the hot weather. She walked up to the front gate. She didn't barge in. She just stood there as if waiting to be invited. Miguel saw her first, and I felt him tense. "She's here," he said softly. Sarah moved to step forward, but I raised my hand. I went to the gate myself. Conversations quieted around us, but no one left. No one hid. It seemed everyone knew this moment would come. "Lisa," Amanda said in a rough, low voice, "can I speak to Hammy? He's with his friends. I just wanted to see him, talk to him, tell him I'm sorry." There were no tears, no true remorse, just a generic apology, cold and hollow. She didn't want forgiveness. She wanted to erase her humiliation, regain her composure. "Amanda," I said, "this isn't the time to pretend nothing happened. You can wait for Hammy to come to you, or you can finally tell the truth here. Now." She went pale. "What truth? That you tried to destroy the only space where your son was happy? That you exposed us, manipulated us, threatened us? You caused this." She swallowed. "It's not that simple." "No," I agreed. "It's much simpler. You just don't want to admit it." Her eyes flicked around, seeking support, but everyone was standing firm, watching. The entire neighborhood, now united, had already chosen a side. That's when Hammy appeared. He came slowly, still dripping pool water, his t-shirt clinging to his body. He stopped next to me, looked at his mother. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. Amanda took half a step toward him. "Hammy, you only came because there's going to be a photo, right?" he asked quietly. Silence. "Because people will see. Because if nobody was here, you'd still be locked in that room, making me think this was all my fault." Amanda stammered, but Haim went on. "I don't want to live with the fear of breathing wrong around you anymore. I don't want to feel like a burden or a project. I just wanted to be your son, but you want a trophy." His words fell like nails onto the ground, loud and heavy. Amanda sagged as if each word hollowed her out from the inside. "Then I'm staying with them," Haim said, motioning to us. "Staying with the people who accept me the way I am." Amanda didn't reply, didn't argue, didn't ask for a second chance. She just nodded, and she left, this time without looking back. That night, we unveiled the plaque. Miguel took photos. Sarah made a toast with passion fruit juice. Hammy attached the final little plate in the corner, smiling faintly. He seemed lighter, still hurt, but free. Leah said he looked less blurry. Lucas wrote, "Really welcome, Hammy," on a piece of paper and stuck it to the patio umbrella. And me, in the midst of everyone, realized this was never just about a pool. It was about invisible fences and about who decides to tear them down. Now on to the next story. Story 3. When I was 23, I turned down a $95,000 offer from a tech firm in the city to stay in my small hometown and help my dad expand the family business. At the time, the company was little more than a string of paper files, an outdated website, and a list of 30 recurring clients who were mostly family friends. It was called On Solutions, a modest commercial real estate management firm my dad had run for years out of a cramped office above a dry cleaner. He had 2 part-time employees, no CRM, and the kind of spreadsheet system that made your eyes bleed just trying to track invoices. But I saw potential. More than that, I saw an opportunity to build something of my own with family. I don't know if that was naive or hopeful or both. My name's Tyler. I'm 35 now, and I spent 12 years helping turn On Solutions into a multimillion-dollar operation. And last spring, my dad gave the company to my younger sister with a smile on his face and told me I worked better in the background. I know how that sounds. And trust me, I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't lived every excruciating moment of it. My sister Alana is 3 years younger than me, and if you asked anyone in our family, she's been the golden child since birth. Blonde, bubbly, photogenic, the kind of person who posts selfies in a hard hat on construction sites just to say, checking progress. Even though she showed up 5 minutes late and left before the site tour began. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, or I did back when she still called me to ask how to write an invoice or beg me to explain cap rates before client meetings. Back then, she knew her lane, marketing, social events, client-facing polish. I handled operations, logistics, legal, analytics, and everything else that made the business work. I was fine being behind the scenes until suddenly that wasn't enough anymore. Growing up, Dad was always one of those tough love types. He didn't believe in praise unless it came with a lesson. He didn't believe in handouts. He didn't believe in emotion, especially from his son. But Alana? He used to sneak out of work early to go to her soccer games, bought her a new car at 16 for safety, and once told me that girls need more support. It's just how it is. First, I let it go. I figured if I worked hard, he'd notice. I didn't need cheering crowds or participation trophies. I just wanted his respect. So, when I passed on that tech job and told him I wanted to help him modernize the company, he shook my hand and said, "Don't expect a thank you. Let's see what you can do." That handshake became the beginning of everything. And I didn't realize until much later that it would also be the start of my erasure. I started with the basics, moved our files to a digital system, cleaned up the books, rebuilt the website, launched an online portal for clients, and started building partnerships with local contractors. I worked 70-hour weeks, took online courses in property law, and eventually got my broker license to handle more deals in-house. Within 3 years, we tripled our recurring contracts and signed our first 7-figure management deal with a regional medical group. Dad called it luck. I called it strategic targeting. But when Alana graduated with a degree in communications and came back home looking for a job, guess who he said would lighten the mood around here? Suddenly, I wasn't just running operations. I was managing my sister, too. First, it was fine. She had a good eye for aesthetics, redesigned our logo, took over our Instagram, and polished up our listing packages. But within a few months, she started showing up late, missing follow-up calls, and taking credit for ideas that weren't hers. One time, I spent 2 weeks analyzing performance data to pitch a new pricing model. She sat in on the meeting, smiled, and 2 days later, she posted about her new client-centered tier system on LinkedIn. I brought it up with Dad. He shrugged and said, "She's just trying to feel valuable, Ty. Let her have a win." That's when it started hitting me. This wasn't about her trying to find her place. This was about him giving her mine. It got worse over time. She'd accidentally forget to copy me on key emails, schedule over my meetings, and flirt her way into client dinners that should have been mine to lead. I watched as she turned from helpful to entitled, from team player to company mascot. And Dad, he leaned into it. He started introducing her as our future CEO, started calling her the face of, and started telling me to teach her everything I know so she can take over one day. I thought it was a joke, a weird compliment maybe, until one Monday morning last April. I walked into the office and saw a gold-embossed plaque on her door. Alana, Chief Executive Officer. There was no meeting, no discussion, no memo. I just stared at it waiting for someone to explain. Then Dad walked by, looked at my face and said, "We wanted to surprise her. She's earned it." That was the moment something inside me cracked. I didn't say anything at first. Not to him, not to her. I just walked back to my desk, closed my laptop, and sat there, heart pounding, ears ringing, chest tight, until the office emptied out for lunch. Later that afternoon, I confronted him in the conference room. He didn't even blink. "You've done incredible work," he said. "But leadership isn't just about systems and numbers. Alana has presence, charisma, people like her. You're great at the background stuff, Ty. But she's the one people remember." I was stunned. I asked him if I was being demoted. He said, "No, of course not. You'll still handle the day-to-day. You're essential, but from a branding perspective, she's the future." Couldn't believe it. I wasn't demoted. I was just invisible again. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the birthdays I missed because I was on late-night calls. All the weekends I gave up to draft contracts. All the times I said we instead of I when talking about our growth, and for what? To be told I was just the guy behind the curtain, the tool, not the builder, the support act, not the show. I kept replaying that smug little plaque in my head. The way Alana posted it to Instagram with the caption, "From baby sister to boss lady, clinking glasses, so proud to lead our family legacy." And the comments, dozens of them, "You deserve it, girl. Killing it. The future is female." Not one mention of the 12 years I poured into that company. The next morning, I drove to our largest client's office, a regional logistics firm we'd been managing properties for since 2019. The CEO, Darren, had always been fair with me, direct, honest. I told him what happened. I told him I was thinking of leaving. And he said something I'll never forget. "If you ever decide to jump ship, Tyler, I'd rather be the first call you make than the last to find out." I left that meeting with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not loud, not angry, just quiet certainty. Like I'd finally remembered I had options, that I didn't have to play the loyal son forever. What happened over the next 6 months would change everything. Not just for me, but for my dad, for Alana, and for the company they tried to run without me. But before any of that happened, there was one moment I still think about every day. A week after the promotion, I came into the office early just to grab a few things. Alana was already there, sitting in Dad's chair, sipping a latte, and scrolling through her phone like she'd owned the place for years. When she saw me, she smiled. That fake, sugary grin she used to get when we were kids, and she knew she'd won. "Morning, Ty," she chirped. "Need help finding your seat?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt done. That was the last time I stepped foot in on Solutions. And that was when the real story began. The week I left the company, I didn't say anything to anyone. No dramatic exit, no email blast, no final speech. I just quietly cleared my desk, forwarded a few critical files to the office manager, and slipped my access card into a drawer like I'd never been there. Dad didn't call. Alana didn't text. I guess they figured I'd sulk, maybe take a week off, then come crawling back with an apology and some proposal to find a new structure that works for everyone. That's how things had always gone before. I'd raise concerns, get brushed off, retreat, then return and keep working like nothing happened because I thought loyalty was the same thing as love. But this time felt different. Something in me had cracked wide open, and the air on the other side was clearer than I expected. I wasn't angry yet, just empty, numb. 2 days after I left, Dad posted a long, self-congratulatory update on LinkedIn titled, "Passing the Torch, a Family Legacy Reinvented." He tagged Alana, wrote about the next generation of leadership, and thanked me in a single sentence for helping set the foundation for our future. That was it. No mention of 12 years. No highlight of the deals I brought in, the systems I built, or the people I trained. Just a warm pat on the head and a line that made me sound like an intern who helped alphabetize the file cabinet before heading off to grad school. I didn't comment. I didn't even like the post. I just took a screenshot and filed it under a new folder I made on my laptop that night. Rebuild. The next few weeks were surreal. I slept in, read books I hadn't touched in years, spent actual time with my girlfriend, Lacey, who, bless her heart, had been quietly watching this entire mess unfold with more grace than I deserved. We cooked dinners, took walks, watched movies. She didn't press me about what came next, just sat next to me on the couch and let the silence stretch out until I was ready to speak. I think that's when I realized how loud my life had been for so long. All the noise I had accepted as normal. Meetings, deadlines, Dad's constant critiques, Alana's fake laughs echoing down the hall, the frantic pings of Slack and email and calendars overlapping like a storm of never-ending obligation. Without all that, I felt weightless, like a man returning from war and realizing he doesn't remember what peace feels like. But peace didn't last. About 3 weeks after I left, I started hearing things. Quiet murmurs from former coworkers, a dropped comment from a vendor, a couple of confused texts from clients I used to manage. The logistics firm, our biggest account, apparently hadn't heard from anyone in over a week. Lease renewals were being missed. Inspection reports were late. Invoices were wrong. At first, I chalked it up to transition chaos. Maybe they just hadn't adjusted to the new roles yet. Maybe Alana was still figuring things out. But then Darren, the CEO of that logistics firm, called me directly. "I don't want to put you in a weird spot," he said, voice tight with frustration. "But are you still involved in our account at all?" I told him no. Not since the restructuring. He paused. "Well, that explains a lot." I asked what was going on. He sighed, said, "Let's just say your replacement doesn't quite understand the term net absorption." I blinked. That was Commercial Real Estate 101. Are they not looping in the leasing team? There is no leasing team anymore. Alana said she streamlined things. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Wait, she cut our leasing department? Apparently, said she was creating a vertical marketing model, whatever that means. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the clients who'd trusted me. People I'd built years-long relationships with now stuck under Alana's shiny, self-branded regime. I pictured her smiling through sales calls, tossing buzzwords around like confetti while emails went unanswered and property sat empty, because she didn't know the difference between build-to-suit and spec development. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. I reminded myself over and over that I'd walked away, that I had no responsibility to fix what they'd broken. But something in me itched. Darren's company wasn't just a big account. It was our anchor, the account that paid salaries that attracted other clients by association. If they pulled out, it wouldn't just be a blip. It would be a bleeding wound. And part of me, the part that still remembered every late night and early morning I spent building that account from scratch, hated the idea of watching it rot under my sister's glossy incompetence. The next week, Darren invited me to lunch. He didn't dance around it. "I know you're not looking to jump back into the fire," he said, swirling the ice in his tea. "But if you ever considered starting something new, maybe boutique, maybe selective, I'd be interested in having that conversation." I stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" He shook his head. "Not a job. A seat at the table. Partner level." I didn't say yes. Not yet. I still had loyalty rotting in my bones like mold that wouldn't shake. But I didn't say no either. Then came the final straw. About 2 months after I left, Mom invited me to dinner. Not an unusual thing. She missed me, hated the tension, and had always played the role of family peacekeeper. But this time she said, "Your dad wants to see you too. Just come, please." Against my better judgment, I went. The house was the same as always. A tidy, too quiet colonial on the nicer side of town, where the smell of lemon cleaner hit you before the door finished opening. Dad was in the dining room, Alana already seated at the head of the table like she owned the place. She wore a white blazer and that same smug expression I'd seen on her face the day she took my seat. Dinner started. Civil small talk. Mom asking about Lacey, Dad asking about the weather like we didn't live in the same zip code. I played along. I nodded, smiled, tried to find the rhythm of a family that no longer felt like mine. Then somewhere between the second course and dessert, Dad dropped the hammer. "We've been thinking," he said, setting down his fork, "and we wanted to offer you a chance to come back." I blinked. "Come back? Not in your old role," Alana jumped in. "Obviously, things have evolved, but we thought maybe you could consult on a project basis." We'd even pay market rate. The room went still. Consult. Market rate. They were offering to hire me. Not as a partner, not even as an employee, but as a freelancer in the company I built with a smile. Are you serious? I asked. Dad shrugged. You left. We had to restructure. But there's still a place for you, Ty, if you're willing to accept where the company's going. I looked at Alana. She didn't flinch, just sipped her wine and waited for my answer like I was some job candidate in a second-round interview. Something broke open in my chest. 12 years. I gave them 12 years. And now they wanted to rent me like a temp with a fancy resume. I stood up quietly. My chair didn't even scrape. I appreciate the offer, I said, voice calm. But I think I've finally accepted where the company's going, too. Then I walked out. Mom called after me. Alana said something snide I didn't hear. Dad didn't move. That night I called Darren and said yes. We filed the paperwork for a new venture the next day. We called it Keystone Commercial, and within a month our first 3 clients came directly from On Solutions. I didn't poach them. I didn't even reach out first. They came to me quietly, respectfully, and said the same thing in different words. You were the reason we stayed. At first, I kept my distance. I didn't flaunt the growth, didn't post anything online, but then I heard Alana was telling people I left because I couldn't handle the pressure of leadership, that I struggled with collaboration, that I'd been outpaced by innovation. So, I updated my LinkedIn, co-founder and managing partner at Keystone Commercial. Focused on results, not titles. I didn't tag anyone, but she saw it. And the silence that followed? That was the first warning bell. They were about to fall apart. But the worst part? They didn't even see it coming. Not yet. For the first time in over a decade, I felt like I was building something that couldn't be taken away. Not a hand-me-down legacy, not a placeholder title, not a stepping stool for someone else's ego, just something mine. Keystone Commercial started with 1 laptop, a rented desk in a co-working space, and a mountain of skepticism from people who thought I was either crazy or bitter or both. And maybe I was, at least a little, because you don't pour 12 years of your life into something only to watch it get handed off like a shiny accessory to your less qualified sibling and walk away without some scars. I had them. I just chose to use them like armor. The first few weeks were chaos. I barely slept. I split time between meeting with contractors, filing incorporation documents, sketching out a service structure, and navigating what I can only describe as polite hostility from vendors who were still technically tied to On Solutions but liked me more. Some were hesitant to jump ship. Others made it clear they would the second the paperwork was clean. I didn't push anyone. I just did what I always did. I worked quietly, consistently, thoroughly. Lacey, as always, was my rock through it all. She made coffee in the mornings before her own shifts, left sticky notes with encouragement on my monitor, and never once asked why I looked so tired. She just squeezed my hand when I needed it. I think she knew what I hadn't admitted yet. That part of me still felt hollow even as I rebuilt. Because the truth is, success doesn't erase betrayal. It just gives you somewhere else to stand while you try to heal. Darren wasn't just my first partner. He was the first person in months who looked at me like I hadn't been reduced to a background character. He looped me in on strategy meetings, introduced me as the guy who saved our real estate division, and gave me space to experiment. One of my first projects under Keystone was reworking their entire lease management pipeline. And within 2 months, we'd slashed renewal delays by 70%. Word started to spread, not loudly, not publicly, just little ripples. A broker I used to train reached out and asked if I was open to consulting. A former intern, now a property manager, DM'd me to say, "If you're hiring, I'd love to work under you again." Even our old website designer left a message saying, "I never understood why they sidelined you. Let me know if you need anything." Still, I kept it low-key. No flashy launch parties, no billboards, just work. Because I wasn't interested in revenge. Not yet. I was interested in reclaiming the part of me that had been buried under other people's ambition. Then, about 3 months in, I hit the wall. I just finished a 14-hour day reviewing zoning maps and tenant improvement requests when I got a message from my bank. "Your account balance is below the configured alert threshold." I checked. I had less than $400 left in my checking account. Everything, rent for the office space, legal fees, software subscriptions, hiring an assistant, had drained faster than I expected. I'd reinvested every cent Darren paid me into the business. And while invoices were out, none had been paid yet. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, suddenly aware of how quiet the office was at 2 a.m. My chest tightened. What was I doing? I'd left a six-figure salary, walked away from a steady role, burned bridges, and for what? To prove a point, to chase some pride-soaked dream of independence. What if they were right? Dad, Alana, everyone who ever implied I wasn't leadership material. What if I'd thrown it all away for nothing? That night, I didn't go home. I curled up on the ratty couch in the corner of the office and just stared at the ceiling tiles, letting every doubt crawl out of the corners of my mind and settle into my bones. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in it. The fear, the loneliness, the feeling of being utterly, totally alone. Lacey showed up the next morning with 2 coffees and a muffin. She took one look at me and said, "You're not allowed to make any major decisions until you shower and eat something." I laughed weakly. Then she sat beside me and said the thing that finally cracked the dam. "You didn't leave because you failed," she said. "You left because you were done being used. That's not quitting. That's self-respect." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until the words settled into the silence between us. She didn't ask how much money was left, didn't question my plan, just squeezed my hand and said, "Let's get through today. That's all you have to do." It wasn't a grand turning point, but it was the start. Later that week, 2 outstanding invoices cleared. I could breathe again. I moved a few meetings, took 1 full day off to rest. Then I got back to it. By the end of month 4, Keystone had 5 full-time clients. By month 5, we signed our first property development deal. And by month 6, we were turning a profit. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. Meanwhile, whispers about solutions kept trickling in. First, it was small stuff. Rumors that Alana had missed a key deadline, that their marketing team was being slashed, that Dad was suddenly more hands-on again. But then one of my old contacts sent me something that made my jaw tighten. An article in the local business journal titled, "Shaky Ground. Legacy Firm Faces Transition Turmoil." It wasn't a hit piece, but it wasn't flattering. Buried in the second paragraph was a quote from a former client who said, "We loved working with Tyler. It hasn't been the same since he left." I didn't gloat, but I did screenshot it and save it in the same folder I'd made months ago, Rebuild. Around that same time, I went to a networking mixer, my first in nearly a year. Lacey practically shoved me out the door, saying I needed to act like a CEO, not a hermit. I wore a suit that actually fit, combed my hair, and tried to remember how to small talk without feeling like a fraud. An hour in, someone tapped me on the shoulder. "Tyler." I turned. It was Rachel, a senior asset manager from one of our oldest institutional clients. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She smiled. "Heard a rumor you were back in the game." We chatted, caught up. She mentioned they were looking to expand into 3 new markets, but hadn't found the right management partner. Then she leaned in slightly and said, "Between you and me, we never understood why you weren't running things before." I nodded, a slow, tired kind of gratitude warming in my chest. Later that week, we inked a new deal with them. It was the biggest contract of my career. Keystone had officially outgrown its co-working desk. I leased a proper office, hired 3 new staff, built an internal portal for clients. We were becoming what I'd always dreamed of. Not a clone of, but the company I thought on could have been if it had ever respected me. And that's when I got the call. It was a Friday late. I was the last one in the office again. But this time, it wasn't from desperation. It was from momentum. I was sketching out projections for Q3 when my phone buzzed. I stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds before picking up. His voice was quiet. Hoarse. "Tyler." I waited. There was a pause. Then he said the words I never thought I'd hear. "We made a mistake." I didn't move. "We," he continued, voice breaking slightly. "We need you. The business is not what it was. Alana's doing her best, but I should have handled things differently." He didn't say it directly, but I could hear the panic under the surface, the cracks in the confident, untouchable man who used to make me feel small just by raising an eyebrow. "Can you come back?" He asked it like a whisper, and in that moment, every version of me collided. The loyal son, the silent partner, the broken man on the office couch, the rebuilder, the CEO. I didn't answer, not yet, because this wasn't the end. This was the moment before the storm, the part where the prodigal son has to decide. Does he return to the house that exiled him, or burn the blueprint and build something better from scratch? I looked out the window, city lights flickering below, and I finally realized I wasn't the one who lost everything. They were. I didn't call him back. Not that night, not the next day either. Something about the way he said it, "Can you come back?" didn't sit right with me. Not just because of what he was asking, but because of how he was asking. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a lifeline tossed out only after the boat had already started sinking. And I couldn't shake the image of Alana sitting in that corner office with my title, my clients, and my systems, only to realize the ship was moving too fast for her to steer. That wasn't my problem anymore. At least it shouldn't have been. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't think about it, about going back just for a day, just to see the panic in their eyes. Not out of pettiness, but out of justice. Maybe that's just a fancy word for revenge. But when someone rewrites your history, hands your life's work to someone who didn't earn it, and tells you to smile about it, they don't get to rewrite the ending, too. And I was ready to write my own. The next week, I went quiet. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I did. I needed time. I needed information. I needed leverage. So I started listening. The first call I made was to Brian, one of the old leasing agents from On who had quietly taken a buyout when Alana restructured the team. He was good at what he did. Sharp, observant, and more importantly, loyal to a fault. We met for coffee downtown, and the second I walked in, he gave me a look that said, "It's about time. You heard they lost the Skywood contract, right?" he asked, sipping his black coffee. I blinked. "What?" "Yeah. Slipped through their fingers last month. The client said they couldn't get timely answers. I used to manage that relationship personally. Alana replaced me with an intern. That made my stomach flip. Skywood was a $2.8 million management deal. One of our crown jewels. What else?" Brian didn't hesitate. "Morale's gone. Turnovers through the roof. Vendors aren't getting paid on time, so they're tacking on late fees or walking. And get this, they hired an outside PR firm to rebrand the company narrative. New logo, new tagline, full facelift. Using what money?" He shrugged. "No idea, but word is they burned through last year's surplus by Q2. I sat back, trying to process it all. They weren't just floundering. They were hemorrhaging and they were hiding it. "Why didn't this make the news?" I asked. "Because your dad still has friends on the board of the chamber. They're trying to cover the smell, but it's seeping out. Another few months and they'll be out of cash." I didn't smile, but something deep in my chest flickered back to life. It wasn't about revenge yet. It was about clarity because for the first time I saw it. The empire I had built wasn't built with their foundation. It was mine, my systems, my workflows, my relationships. They inherited the house, but I took the blueprint and I still had the master key. Over the next few weeks, I made more calls. I reconnected with 2 former analysts who had left after I did. Both quietly unhappy, both looking for a fresh start. I spoke with our old software developer, who told me Alana had replaced our custom CRM with a flashy subscription tool that looked nice but didn't integrate with half the back-end systems. "It's like putting a racing spoiler on a car with no engine," he said. "If you ever want to rebuild the old stack, I've still got the code base backed up." I met with 3 former clients who dropped on in the last year. All of them polite, all of them eager to talk. One even slid a manila folder across the table. "I didn't know who else to give this to," he said. Inside were screenshots, emails, documents, all time-stamped, all showing systemic failures, missed deadlines, and doctored performance reports from Alana's team. It was worse than I thought. They weren't just incompetent. They were desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. The final piece fell into place one morning when I was cleaning out an old storage drive from my own days. Tucked deep in a folder labeled Legacy Docs was a file I hadn't opened in years. A full strategic operations manual I had written myself. It covered everything: client onboarding, lease escalation processes, vendor management hierarchies, compliance checklists, and performance benchmarks. The blueprint, the DNA of the entire company. I remembered printing out a copy and handing it to Dad back in year 6. I remembered the way he smiled and said, "This will keep the engine running even if you're on vacation." And then he filed it away. Now, staring at the digital version, I realized something. They were still using it. Brian confirmed it a few days later. They haven't changed a thing. That's the funny part. They talk about innovation, but they're still running on your playbook. That's when it hit me. They didn't steal the company. They inherited a machine they didn't know how to operate. And I was the only one who knew how it worked. That was the opportunity. But opportunity without timing is just a thought. So I waited. I didn't reach out to Dad again. I didn't respond to the LinkedIn message Alana sent me. A generic, "Hey, would love to chat if you're free sometime," with a smiley face at the end. I just kept building Keystone quietly, carefully, strategically, until the phone rang again. This time it was Mom. She never called me at work. Never without a reason. Her voice was strained, fragile. "Your father, he's not doing well, Tyler." My stomach tensed. "Is he sick?" "No, just worn down. The company's in trouble." He won't say it out loud, but I can see it. He's up all night. He barely eats. And Alana. She paused. "I don't think she understands how bad it is." I sat down. "I'm not asking you to fix it," she said. "But maybe you could talk to him. Just see for yourself." I promised I'd think about it. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat in my living room, and wrote out a list. Not a to-do list, a terms list. Because if they wanted me back, it wouldn't be as a consultant. It wouldn't be under Alana. And it sure as hell wouldn't be as an apology tour. If I went back, it would be on my terms. But then I stopped. What if I didn't go back? What if, instead of returning to fix their mess, I made sure no one else trusted them with anything important ever again? What if I did the one thing they never expected me to do? Expose the truth. I already had the data, the evidence, the testimonials. I had everything I needed to show how deep the rot went. Not through public slander, but through results. Clients talk, reputation spreads. And if you want to crush a company in our industry, you don't need a billboard. You just need to show people a better option. And I was the better option now. So I started laying the groundwork. I met with a local business podcast host and gave a quiet, humble interview about my journey, the challenges of starting over, and the importance of operational integrity. I never mentioned on by name, but anyone who knew the industry could read between the lines. I published a short white paper, Why Real Estate Management Fails, a case study in legacy systems. I cited anonymized data, backed up every claim with verifiable trends, and ended with a simple call to action. If you're ready for a better approach, call us. And they did. One by one, the calls started coming in. Old clients, new referrals, former partners who had left the industry and were now re-entering with fresh budgets and bad memories. Keystone wasn't just growing. It was becoming a vacuum. And On was beginning to notice the draft. One afternoon, about 2 months into this quiet campaign, Brian called me with a chuckle. "You'll like this," he said. "Word on the street is they just hired a growth consultant to help reverse their revenue trends." "Anyone we know?" "Yeah, Greg Fiss." I laughed. Greg was a hack. Flashy suits, big promises, no follow-through. He used to pitch us every year at On, and I shot him down every time. "They must really be desperate," I said. "They are." "And Tyler?" "Yeah, they're planning a merger. Some boutique firm out of Chicago. Small fish, but the buyout clause is brutal. If it falls through, On loses majority stake in half their contracts." I smiled for the first time all day. This was it. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. They were gambling everything to stay afloat. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to tip the scales. Not loud, not cruel, just precise, surgical. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't sabotage. It's letting people walk into a trap they set for themselves. And when the moment came, I'd be ready with facts, with receipts, and with the calm, collected voice of someone who no longer had anything to prove, but everything to show. I closed my laptop. The setup was done. Now all that was left was the strike. It happened faster than I expected. Revenge, when done right, isn't some grand theatrical moment with fireworks and a standing ovation. It's a series of calculated dominoes, slow to line up, but devastating when tipped. And when the first one fell, it was almost quiet. Almost. Word got out that On Solutions was finalizing a merger with a mid-tier Chicago firm called Hartwell Equity. Hartwell specialized in distressed real estate assets, and it was clear they weren't merging because they believed in vision. They were there for the scraps, for the bones. This wasn't a partnership. This was a soft acquisition dressed up in legacy-preserving language. What made it worse? The merger was predicated on retaining its largest remaining clients for at least 2 more quarters. That clause alone showed how fragile they were. Hartwell didn't want to inherit a sinking ship. They wanted guarantees, so I gave them none. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't call anyone up and whisper secrets. I didn't smear their name across headlines or start a smear campaign. No, I did exactly what I'd always done. I performed better. Our team at Keystone had grown to 9 people by then. We weren't flashy. We didn't spend money on expensive branding videos or sponsored gala tables like Alana was doing. Instead, we answered emails fast. We tracked ROI with brutal precision. We onboard vendors in half the time. We gave clients a reason to talk, and, more importantly, to talk about us. And they did. Behind closed doors, over lunches, in investor meetings. I don't know what happened to On, they'd say. But Keystone, that's who we're watching now. The final strike wasn't even delivered by me. It came from a client I'd signed in March, a mid-size regional healthcare network with 15 commercial leases and 2 new development sites. They had originally been with On for over a decade. But after 6 months of Keystone handling a single test property, they moved their entire portfolio over to us. That alone was a blow. But what made it fatal? The day they pulled out was the day before Hartwell was set to finalize the merger. The ink wasn't dry yet. And when Hartwell's due diligence team saw the updated client retention sheet and the revenue gap that would follow, they pulled out hard. No negotiation, no counteroffer, just a single-sentence email. Conditions unmet. Acquisition terms no longer viable. I found out through Brian, who still had friends inside the office. "You should have seen her face," he said. Alana was pacing like a wind-up toy. Your dad just sat there. Didn't say a word for once. I didn't gloat, not out loud, but I did sit on my balcony that night, a glass of scotch in hand, and breathe in the cleanest air I'd felt in years. That feeling, it wasn't pride. It wasn't vengeance. It was closure. But the story wasn't over yet. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a blocked number. I don't usually answer those, but something told me to pick up. It was Alana. Her voice was different, smaller. "Hi," she said. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." I didn't respond. She sighed. "Dad's not well. He's been staying at home. We let go of 4 staff last week. The firm's down to a skeleton crew." I stayed silent. She pushed on. "I know I messed up. I know you don't owe us anything, but I need to say this. You were right about everything. The systems, the clients, the way the business actually runs. I thought I could learn on the job, but I didn't know what I didn't know." Still, I said nothing. She went quiet for a moment. "Then, if there's any chance you'd consider coming back, maybe not as an employee, but as a leader. The company's broken, Tyler, and you're the only one who knows how to fix it." It was almost surreal hearing her say it. This was the same person who once asked me if Excel was just a fancy calculator. Now she was asking for my help. I let the silence stretch before I finally answered. "I did fix it," I said. 12 years ago. You broke it." There was a pause. "I know." More silence. "I'm not coming back," I said calmly. "But I'll make you an offer." I could almost hear her sit up straighter. "You'll hand over the client list. The remaining contracts, the assets, all of it. And On gets dissolved. Keystone takes over what's left. You want to buy us out? No. I'm not paying for something I built already. You'll walk away quietly. And I'll make sure your vendors get paid, your clients get serviced, your staff gets offered a job. She was quiet, processing. And Dad? She finally asked. I'll let him keep the name. He can say whatever he wants at his country club. But if either of you go public with anything that tries to rewrite this story again. I didn't have to finish the sentence. She understood. There was a long pause. Then she said, okay. We met the next week to sign the papers. It was sterile, professional. She brought a lawyer. I brought mine. Dad wasn't there. She looked tired, hollow, like the version of herself that once beamed in Instagram photos holding champagne flutes in a conference room had been quietly erased. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just signed the final document and slid it across the table. When it was over, she stood and said, I'm sorry, Tyler, for all of it. I nodded. That was all. Then I left. 3 months later, On Solutions ceased operations. Keystone absorbed its assets, clients, and remaining staff. We expanded into a new office downtown. Not huge, but clean, efficient, and bright. I built a leadership team that understood humility. We reinvested into systems that didn't need my name on every paper to function well. And for the first time, I took a vacation. Lacey and I flew to Greece. She'd always wanted to go. On our last night there, sitting on a quiet rooftop under a warm Mediterranean sky, she asked me what it felt like. Not just to win, but to finally be done. I thought about it. The years I gave, the nights I lost sleep, the betrayal, the rebuilding, the strike. Then I said, it feels like I finally remembered who I was before they tried to tell me who I wasn't. She smiled, clinked her wine glass against mine, and said the words I'd been waiting to hear for a very long time. You didn't get even, you got better. And she was right, because revenge doesn't have to be loud to be complete. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Jake. I'm 27, and I swear some days I feel like my family lives in an entirely different reality than I do. I grew up in what most people would call a pretty average household. Small town, modest house, nothing too fancy. My parents weren't rich, but we got by. My older brother, Ryan, was always the golden boy, straight A's until high school, popular football team captain. I was the quiet kid who loved computers and saved every penny from part-time jobs. We were different, but I never thought that would matter when we got older. Then I started making real money. Not bragging, but I worked my way up in tech, invested smartly, and by 26 I had enough saved to buy a house outright. I didn't because I like having cash flow and security, but I knew I was on solid financial ground. My parents knew too. That's when the comments started. Jake's the rich one now. My mom would say with a laugh at family dinners. Ryan would grin and ask when I was buying him a car. I'd laugh it off, thinking it was just harmless teasing, but the jokes started feeling sharper, like there was an edge underneath them. It all started sliding downhill the day I came over for Sunday dinner last spring. I just finished a stressful project at work and wanted a relaxing night. Mom was unusually cheerful when I walked in, like she was hiding a secret. After we sat down to eat, she dropped it casually. We finally got Ryan that car he's been dreaming about. Everyone turned to look at me like I should be excited, too. I congratulated him. It was a brand new luxury SUV, not cheap. Then Mom said, still smiling, we used your account to cover most of it. You can afford it. At first, I thought she was joking. My fork was halfway to my mouth when it registered that she was serious. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, my account? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. You left me as cosigner years ago when we set up the savings account. You never use it. Ryan needed a car, so we took $120,000 from there. You'll be fine. Ryan smirked and said, yeah, thanks, man. It's about time some of that money got used for something fun. I couldn't even eat after that. My mind was spinning. They didn't even ask me. They just took it. My entire childhood came rushing back. Ryan always getting the bigger piece of cake, the new bike, the better room, and me being told to stop making a fuss. I asked why they didn't at least call me first. My mom's smile faded. Jake, you have more money than all of us combined. If you can't support your own family, what's the point? Besides, Ryan works hard. He deserves it. I left dinner early that night. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted permanently. My own family had just stolen from me and expected me to be grateful. That night, I logged into the account and stared at the numbers, the missing money. My chest hurt. It wasn't even about the car anymore. It was about the fact that they thought they had the right to decide what I owed them. I didn't confront them right away. I needed to cool down, think. But 2 weeks later, Mom called and said something that made my blood run cold. Ryan's looking at houses now, and we might need to dip in again for the down payment. You'll get it back eventually. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was the beginning of something bigger and much worse. I didn't sleep much after that phone call. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of my apartment fridge, feeling like the walls were closing in. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. My family had decided that my savings were their new safety net, their community fund, and they didn't even have the decency to ask. I kept thinking about my mom's voice on the phone, so casual, so certain I would agree to hand over more money, like it was already decided. I ignored her call the next morning and the one after that. I needed time to think, to figure out what I even wanted to say. I spent my lunch breaks pacing around my office courtyard, replaying that dinner scene over and over. The look on Ryan's face kept flashing in my head. That smug little grin, like he'd just been crowned king of the family. And maybe he had. By the end of the week, Mom showed up at my apartment. She never did that. She hated the city, hated the traffic, hated the noise. But there she was, standing outside my building with a Tupperware container of lasagna like we were about to have some sweet mother-son bonding moment. I almost didn't let her in. "Jake," she said as soon as I opened the door, not even bothering to come inside. "I don't know why you're ignoring me. Ryan found the perfect house. It's on the market now. We need to move fast or someone else will get it." I just stared at her. "Mom," I said finally, "do you hear yourself? You took my money without asking, and now you're back asking for more. Do you even know how much I've worked to save that?" She rolled her eyes like I was being ridiculous. "Of course I do. But what's the point of saving all that money if you're just going to sit on it? This is your brother's future, your family's future. Someday this house will be where we all gather for holidays. You'll thank me later." I almost laughed. Thank her for draining my savings for a house I didn't even want to live in? My hands were shaking, and not from anger, from something deeper, something that felt like betrayal. "Mom, no," I said, my voice coming out sharper than I meant. "You don't get to decide how I spend my money." Her face changed instantly. The sweetness dropped, replaced by a look I hadn't seen since I was a teenager getting grounded. "Jake, you need to stop being so selfish. Ryan has always been there for you. He's your brother. If the roles were reversed, he would help you." That last part hit me like a punch. If the roles were reversed, Ryan wouldn't give me a dime. He wouldn't even lend me gas money without posting about it on Instagram. But I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to get through to her that day. The next weekend, there was another family dinner. I almost skipped it, but some part of me wanted to see how far this would go. When I got there, everyone was already in the living room, Ryan holding court, talking about the house he wanted. He had pictures pulled up on his phone, showing everyone the huge backyard, the open kitchen, the pool. "Jake, man, you've got to see this place," he said when I walked in. "It's perfect, and thanks to you, it's basically ours." I froze in the doorway. "What do you mean, thanks to me?" Mom jumped in. "I talked to the bank this week. We went ahead and got pre-approval for the loan. Your savings will cover the down payment. It's all set." Couldn't believe it. They hadn't just asked me. They'd started the process like I'd already agreed. I set my keys down slowly, trying to stay calm. "You had no right to do that," I said. Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. Like I just told a joke. "Dude, relax. You make more in a year than most people do in 5. This is nothing to you." I turned to Mom and, for the first time, I didn't try to hide the anger in my voice. Close the application right now. I'm not paying for this. The room went silent. My dad, who hadn't said much up to this point, finally spoke up. Jake, don't make this harder than it has to be. Your brother deserves this. He's starting a family. You're just what? Sitting on your money, living alone in that apartment. It was like they had rehearsed this speech. Every word was meant to guilt me, to make me feel like the bad guy for not playing along. I'm not sitting on my money, I said through gritted teeth. I'm building a future for myself. One that doesn't involve being your personal ATM. Ryan threw his hands up. See, this is what I mean. You've changed, man. Ever since you got that big job, you act like you're better than us. That stung more than I wanted it to. I had never flaunted my success, never lorded it over anyone. I just worked hard and made smart choices. Was I supposed to apologize for that? Dinner was tense after that. Nobody talked much, and I left early again. On the drive home, I felt a knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had a family. I felt like I had enemies who happened to share my last name. Over the next few weeks, the pressure didn't stop. Mom kept calling, sending me listings, texting me about our future home. Ryan would send group messages with pictures of furniture, talking about how he couldn't wait to host barbecues. My dad sent me an article about the importance of helping family. It was relentless. Then one night, I got a call from my bank, a fraud alert. Someone had tried to move another large sum from my savings account. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who it was. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling the slow burn of something colder than anger. It was the realization that they weren't going to stop. Not until I made them stop. And that was the moment I decided to take back control, even if it meant tearing down everything they thought they were entitled to. I woke up the morning after the fraud alert call with a pit in my stomach and a decision weighing on me like a brick. I couldn't ignore this anymore. The quiet, passive way I had been handling things wasn't working. They were escalating. I tried keeping my distance, tried being reasonable, tried setting boundaries. They hadn't listened. I spent that entire day going through every account I owned. I changed passwords, moved funds into new, high-security accounts, and even set up two-factor authentication on things I hadn't touched in years. I called the bank personally and told them to remove every name but mine from every account to revoke any cosigner privileges my parents might still have. The representative hesitated when she saw the family connections, but eventually complied after I faxed in documentation. By the time I was done, I felt like I just cut off a limb. Those accounts had been linked to my family since I was a teenager, but it had to be done. Later that evening, I got a call from my mom. I didn't answer. Then a text, Jake, what did you do? We can't access the account. A minute later, another one from Ryan. Not cool, man. You locked us out. We were about to put in the offer on the house. You just cost us everything. I stared at the screen, my hands cold. They weren't even asking. They were accusing me like I had stolen from them. I ignored them for a few days, thinking maybe things would cool down. But on Friday night, I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. My heart dropped. I knew I had locked it that morning. I stepped inside cautiously, every nerve in my body screaming. And then I saw it. My living room was a mess. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered everywhere. And sitting right there on my coffee table was my laptop, but it had clearly been touched. My email was open, my accounts page pulled up on the screen. I stood there frozen for a full minute before it hit me. Someone had been here, and they had been trying to get into my accounts. The anger that rolled through me was white-hot. My first thought was to call the police, but I hesitated. I checked my hidden security camera, a small one I'd installed after a break-in scare last year. I scrubbed through the footage until I saw it. Ryan. There he was, walking into my apartment like he owned the place, using the spare key I had stupidly given Mom years ago for emergencies. He went through my mail, my desk drawers, my files. At one point, he sat on my couch with my laptop on his knees, typing. I had to pause the video because my hands were shaking too much to hold the phone. When I finally pressed play again, I saw him put the laptop back and leave calmly, locking the door behind him like nothing had happened. I felt sick, violated. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust, about safety. My own brother had broken into my home to try and steal from me. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't text, didn't call. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car was there, shiny and smug in the sunlight. Mom opened the door before I even knocked, like she had been waiting for me. "Jake," she said, her tone icy. "I hope you're here to apologize. Do you realize the position you've put us in? The sellers accepted another offer because we couldn't send the down payment in time. You ruined this for your brother." I stepped inside, my jaw tight. "Where's Ryan?" He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like he didn't have a care in the world. "Look who finally decided to show up," he said. "Took you long enough." I pulled out my phone and played the security footage. The smirk fell off his face as soon as he saw himself on screen. "Jake," Mom said sharply, "what is this?" "It's video proof of your son breaking into my apartment," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "He tried to access my accounts. He went through my things." Ryan's face turned red. "I wasn't breaking in. I was just—" "You were just what?" I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. "Just helping yourself? Just looking for more money to take without asking? You crossed a line, Ryan." Dad came in from the garage, his face already tense. "Jake, calm down. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. Ryan had every right." "He had no right." I cut him off. "You all had no right. This is my life, my home, my money. And you've treated it like it's some kind of shared family fund you can raid whenever you want." For a long moment, nobody said anything. The air in the room felt thick, like a storm was about to break. Then Mom spoke, her voice cold as ice. "If you're going to be like this, maybe you shouldn't come around anymore. We don't need your attitude in this house. You can either help this family or you can stay gone." I just stared at her. Those words hit harder than I expected. Help this family or stay gone. Like I was the problem, like I was the one tearing us apart. I turned and walked out without another word. As I got into my car and slammed the door, my hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't fear. It was something sharper, something that felt almost like clarity. Because at that moment I knew one thing for sure. If they wanted me gone, if they wanted me to play the villain, I was going to give them exactly what they asked for. But first, I was going to make sure they understood just how big of a mistake they had made. I didn't go home right away. I just drove. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but I didn't even notice. I drove past my apartment, past the city limits, down empty back roads with the windows down, letting the cold air bite at my face. I needed space. Space from them, from my thoughts, from everything. When I finally pulled over, it was at some forgotten overlook by the river. The place was deserted, quiet, except for the water rushing below. I sat there with the engine off, staring out at the dark water, and let the anger drain out of me until all that was left was something heavier. A dull, aching sadness. It hit me then. I wasn't just mad at them. I was mourning them. Mourning the family I thought I had. The parents who were supposed to protect me, the brother I used to play catch with in the backyard. Those people weren't real anymore. Maybe they never were. I stayed there until it was almost midnight, then finally drove back to my apartment. I locked the door behind me, double-checked the deadbolt, and leaned against it for a long time, just breathing. My apartment had never felt so small, so vulnerable. That weekend, I started pulling away completely. I stopped answering texts, stopped picking up calls. I blocked the group chat Mom kept spamming with updates about Ryan's life. At first, it felt freeing, but the silence started to eat at me. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted, wondering if it was them, wondering if they'd show up again. The first real blow came a few days later when I got a letter from my parents' lawyer. It was written in polite legal language, but the message was clear. They were threatening to sue me. Sue me? Their own son? To recover the funds wrongfully withheld that they claimed had been agreed upon for Ryan's house. I laughed when I first read it. Not because it was funny, but because it was so surreal. They were really willing to take this that far. But later that night, sitting on my couch with the letter crumpled on the table, the laughter turned into something else. My chest felt heavy, like I'd swallowed a stone. This was it, the point of no return. There was no going back after this. I stopped going out with friends, stopped answering work calls after hours, stopped doing anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I felt like I was holding my breath all the time. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Then came the social fallout. Mutual relatives started calling, leaving voicemails that ranged from, "Jake, just talk to them. You're being dramatic," to "You owe it to your family to make this right." My aunt left a message that stung more than I care to admit. "Your mother is heartbroken. She said you stormed out and won't even apologize. She raised you better than this." Apologize for what? For protecting my own money from being stolen? For not letting my brother use me as his personal bank? The worst part was there were moments late at night, lying in bed, when I almost believed them. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I was overreacting. That was the mental loop I got stuck in. Anger, doubt, guilt, then back to anger. But then I'd look at the security footage again. Ryan sitting on my couch with my laptop, rifling through my life like it was nothing, and that would snap me back. Eventually, something inside me shifted. The sadness stopped feeling like a weight and started feeling like a wall between me and them. And behind that wall, I started thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. I began taking quiet steps to cut them out of my life completely. I changed the locks on my apartment and had the spare key recut. I moved all of my remaining funds into an entirely different bank, one they had never had access to, and set up a new investment account under a different institution entirely. I also started documenting everything. I saved every text, every email, every voicemail. I made copies of the security footage and stored them on a separate drive. I forwarded the threatening letter from their lawyer to my own attorney and had him draft a formal response, making it clear that if they tried anything, I was prepared to press charges for trespassing and attempted theft. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about building a record, a paper trail that could protect me later if things got uglier. And they did get uglier. One afternoon, I came home to find a note slipped under my door in Ryan's handwriting. It said, "You think you're better than us now, but wait until Mom and Dad kick you out of their will. You'll regret this." That was when I realized they weren't just after my savings. They were trying to punish me, to break me down until I gave in. But instead of breaking me, it hardened something inside. I stopped feeling guilty, stopped questioning myself. They wanted a villain? Fine. I could be the villain. The next morning, I sat down with my lawyer in his office and told him I wanted to take this further. I wanted a restraining order against Ryan. I wanted everything documented in writing. And if my parents kept harassing me, I wanted to explore legal options against them, too. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but in control. For the first time since this all started, I wasn't just reacting to what they did. I was starting to make moves of my own. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. When I walked out of my lawyer's office that day, the air felt different. Crisp, clear, like I'd finally stepped out from under a storm cloud that had been following me for months. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just waiting for the next punch to land. I was standing up, gloves on, ready to swing back if I had to. The first change I made was subtle. I stopped reacting to every message and voicemail. Instead of feeling that jolt of panic every time my phone buzzed, I muted all of them. My parents' numbers, Ryan's number, even the group chat with my relatives. It was like hitting mute on the chaos. My apartment, for the first time in weeks, felt like mine again. Quiet, safe. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into my projects, staying late. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And the crazy thing was, it paid off. My manager noticed the extra effort and started giving me bigger responsibilities, things normally reserved for more senior staff. I crushed every deadline. I solved problems nobody else could. 2 months later, I was sitting in a boardroom with the VP of my department, being offered a promotion, and not just a small step up, a major one. My salary jumped by nearly 40%, and it came with a significant bonus. I walked out of that meeting grinning like an idiot. And for a moment, I almost reached for my phone to call my parents to share the good news like I used to. But then I remembered the last conversation we'd had, the way Mom had told me I could stay gone if I wouldn't hand over my money. And the smile faded. Instead of calling them, I called my lawyer. We updated my will, my beneficiary designations, and every bit of paperwork that had my family's names on it. If something ever happened to me, not a cent of my estate would go to the people who had tried to destroy me. With the promotion money, I did something I'd been dreaming about for years. I bought a place of my own, a real home, not just a rental apartment. It was a sleek, modern condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. The first night I slept there, lying on a mattress in the middle of the living room because the furniture hadn't even been delivered yet, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. This place wasn't just a home. It was proof. Proof that I could build a life entirely on my own terms. And as my life got better, there seemed to start unraveling. I didn't go looking for updates, but they had a way of finding me. Mutual friends would mention things in passing. That Ryan had lost his job after blowing off too many shifts, that the dream house they wanted had been bought by someone else, that my parents were dipping into their retirement savings to cover Ryan's bills. Every time I heard one of these updates, I felt a twinge of something, not exactly satisfaction, but something close to it, a grim sort of validation. I focused on myself. I started hitting the gym 3 times a week, not to punish myself, but to clear my head. I signed up for a cooking class on weekends and learned how to make more than just takeout noodles. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen since college, people who remembered me as I was before all this mess. And slowly, I started smiling again. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. A colleague I'd worked with on a major project reached out to me about a startup he was joining. They were looking for someone with my exact skill set, and they were offering not just a salary but equity in the company. It was a risk, but for the first time in months I wasn't scared to take one. I said yes. The next 6 months were a blur of 12-hour days, late-night brainstorming sessions, and problem-solving marathons. It was exhausting, but it felt good, like building something from the ground up, something that was mine. And when the company landed a massive funding round, my equity turned into something substantial. Substantial enough that I didn't just have savings anymore. I had real wealth. By the end of that year, I was in a completely different position than when this all started. I had a beautiful home, a thriving career, and enough money invested that I didn't have to worry about anyone ever holding financial power over me again. And that was when the phone calls started up again. At first, I ignored them, but the messages became more desperate. Mom left a voicemail that sounded like she had been crying. "Jake, honey, I know things have been rough between us, but your father and I really need to talk. It's about Ryan. Please call me." Then a text from Dad. "Jake, your brother's in trouble. He needs help. Please don't turn your back on us now." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because for the first time, the power dynamic had shifted. They weren't calling to demand anything. They were calling because they needed me. And a part of me knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. When I heard my dad's message, I didn't delete it like I had the others. I just sat there in my condo, phone in my hand, replaying it again and again. "Your brother's in trouble. He needs help." It wasn't anger in his voice this time. It was desperation. I didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I started digging. I still had connections in town and people talked, especially when someone like Ryan started making a spectacle of himself. It didn't take long to learn what had happened. Ryan had quit his job months ago, telling everyone he was about to start his own business. He took out loans, maxed out credit cards, bought flashy equipment, and even rented a space for some kind of luxury car detailing studio. The business never got off the ground. He fell behind on rent, got sued for unpaid bills, and now creditors were after him. The kicker, the car they had bought with my money, that luxury SUV Ryan had been so proud of, had been repossessed. I should have felt vindicated, and a part of me did, but more than that, I felt calm. This was what rock bottom looked like for them. And for the first time, I was in a position not just to watch, but to decide how this story ended. I called my lawyer again. We met in his office the next day and I laid everything out. The break-in, the threats, the attempted transfer from my account, and now the desperate calls asking for help. He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You're in a very strong position right now, Jake," he said. "Legally, you have every right to cut them off completely. But if you're looking for a way to send a message, there are options." That was when we started crafting a plan. Not something rash or impulsive. Something careful, deliberate, airtight. Something that wouldn't just protect me, but make sure they couldn't try to spin the narrative and paint me as the villain ever again. I had him draft a formal cease and desist letter addressed to my parents and Ryan, outlining every violation they had committed, from unauthorized withdrawals to trespassing, and putting them on notice that further harassment would result in legal action. We included copies of the security footage stills, time-stamped and signed, just to remind them that I had evidence. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I started gathering leverage. I reached out to a friend who worked in finance and, over coffee, I asked her a hypothetical question. If someone misused a joint account to take money without permission, what could the other party do? She raised an eyebrow and said, "Hypothetically, they could file a claim, freeze the funds, and demand a full accounting. If they had proof, it could even become a criminal matter." That gave me an idea. I filed a formal report with the bank regarding the original $120,000 withdrawal for Ryan's car. The bank opened an internal review, and because I had never signed anything authorizing the transaction, they were obligated to investigate. I didn't know if I'd get the money back, but the look on Ryan's face when he found out the bank was scrutinizing his shiny new toy purchase would be worth it by itself, even if the car was already gone. Meanwhile, my life outside of them kept getting better. The startup I had joined was gaining serious traction, and I was part of key negotiations for a partnership deal that could double our revenue. My stake in the company was becoming more valuable by the week. I was on track to be financially independent for life by the time I turned 30. And that power, the kind of power they could never take away from me, gave me the confidence to finally answer one of my mom's calls. It was a Thursday evening when I picked up. "Jake." Her voice sounded small, almost timid. "Oh, thank God you answered. We've been so worried." I didn't say anything for a moment, letting the silence stretch just enough to make her uncomfortable. "What do you want?" I said finally, my voice calm. She hesitated. "It's Ryan. He's in trouble. He owes a lot of money and they're threatening to take us to court. We could lose the house, Jake." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that sink in. Lose the house? The same house where she told me I could stay gone? "I see," I said evenly. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because you can help," she said, almost pleading now. "You have the means. If you could just—" I cut her off gently. "Mom, do you remember telling me that I could either help the family or stay gone?" She was silent. "Well," I said, "I stayed gone, and then I hung up." The next morning, I instructed my lawyer to send the cease and desist letter, but I wasn't done yet. A few days later, I learned from a friend who still lived near my parents that their house had quietly been listed for sale. They were trying to get out from under the debt before it swallowed them whole. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, because I had been waiting for exactly this moment. When I heard their house was on the market, something inside me clicked into place. It was like the final piece of a puzzle I had been putting together for months had finally locked in. They were vulnerable now, financially, emotionally, socially, and this wasn't about petty payback anymore. This was about closure, about making sure they could never rewrite the story to make me the villain. I met with my lawyer again the next day. This time there was no hesitation in my voice. "I want to make a move," I told him. "Something that makes it crystal clear that they can't just take from me and get away with it." He listened carefully, then nodded. "If the house is up for sale, there's a lot we can do to slow things down. We can file a lien, make a claim on the proceeds for the money taken from your account. That would put everything on hold until it's resolved." I leaned back in my chair, considering that, would they know it was me? "Oh, they'd know," he said with a faint smile. "Their realtor would have to tell them the sale can't close until the lien is lifted." I sat there for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. I could almost picture it. Mom pacing in the kitchen, Ryan shouting about how unfair it was, Dad trying to keep his voice calm but seething underneath. The same way they'd all looked at me when they told me they'd taken my money and expected me to thank them. "Do it," I said finally. Within a week, the lien was filed. My lawyer handled the paperwork, but I got a copy of the filing and I kept it on my desk like a trophy. It wasn't about getting the money back anymore, though that was part of it. It was about making them feel the weight of what they had done. And then, just to twist the knife, I made my next move. I reached out to their realtor through my lawyer, of course, and asked for a showing. I wanted to see the house before it sold. At first, the realtor hesitated, but when he learned I was a serious buyer, he agreed. Walking back into that house was strange. It smelled the same. The faint scent of Mom's lavender cleaner, the creak of the floorboards near the hallway, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage set, like I was walking through someone else's life. The realtor gave me the tour, pointing out upgrades and features, but I barely listened. My mind was buzzing. I imagined what it would look like if I owned it, not as a family home, but as an investment property. Renters in and out, no sentimental ties. I didn't make an offer that day, but the idea lodged itself in my brain and refused to leave. Meanwhile, the cease and desist letter I'd sent started having its own effect. My parents stopped calling. Ryan went silent. Mutual relatives who had been so quick to guilt-trip me before suddenly stopped leaving voicemails. It was as if they had finally realized I wasn't bluffing, that there were real consequences to pushing me. Then, 2 weeks later, I got a text from Ryan. "You think you've won, huh? Mom and Dad are losing everything because of you. Hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back a single line. "I didn't make you take my money. You did that all by yourself." I never got a reply. A month later, the house still hadn't sold. The lien had scared off more than one potential buyer, and word was spreading around the neighborhood that something was wrong. My parents, who had always been so concerned with appearances, were now the subject of gossip. And then came the final opportunity, the one I hadn't even been expecting. The realtor reached out again, this time almost begging me to come back. "The sellers are desperate," he said. "If you're still interested, they'll take almost any reasonable offer." I scheduled another showing, this time with my lawyer present. And when I walked through those doors again, I didn't feel anger this time. I felt something colder, calmer. By the end of that week, I had submitted an offer below market value, but still high enough to make it tempting given their situation. It was accepted within 48 hours. I didn't tell them it was me until closing day. When my parents walked in and saw me sitting across the table, their faces drained of color. Ryan didn't come. Maybe he couldn't face me. Mom's hands shook as she signed the papers. Dad wouldn't look at me at all. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not until every signature was on the page and the keys were sitting in front of me. Only then did I look up and meet their eyes. "You told me I could stay gone," I said quietly. "So I did. But now this house, this memory, is mine, just like my money always was." I picked up the keys, thanked the realtor, and walked out without looking back. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly free. When I stepped out of that closing office, the keys heavy in my hand, I felt like I just crossed the finish line. But there was still the fallout, and I knew it was coming. That evening, I drove to the house one last time before the new locks were installed. The place was empty now, stripped of furniture, the echoes of footsteps bouncing off the walls. I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen where I'd done homework as a kid, the hallway where Ryan and I used to race Matchbox cars, the backyard where we'd grilled burgers every summer. It all felt so much smaller now, like it had shrunk to match the people who once tried to control me. The next morning, the calls started again. I didn't answer at first, but eventually I picked up. "Jake." Mom's voice cracked through the receiver, a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How could you do this to us? We built our lives in that house. That was supposed to be your brother's future." I closed my eyes, letting her words settle for a moment before replying. "Mom, you built your lives by taking from mine. You stole my money without asking. You broke into my home. You threatened me. You told me to stay gone. I just gave you what you asked for." "You're being cruel," she snapped. But there was no real heat in her voice this time, just exhaustion. Your brother has nothing now. Then maybe, I said evenly, he'll finally learn what it feels like to earn something for himself. I ended the call before she could respond. Later that week, I drove by the house again. This time, Ryan was outside loading the last of his things into a dented pickup truck. When he saw me pull up, he froze. For a moment, I thought he might yell, might storm over and start another fight. But he didn't. He just stood there, jaw tight, and finally said, "Hope you're happy, man. You got what you wanted." I stepped out of the car and looked him in the eye. "No, Ryan," I said quietly. "I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted a family that respected me. Instead, I got this. But at least now we're even." He didn't reply. He just climbed into the truck and drove away without another word. Over the next few months, the dust settled. The lien I had filed was lifted after the sale closed, and the bank's internal review finally wrapped up. To my surprise, they credited a significant portion of the $120,000 back to my account, citing unauthorized withdrawal and breach of co-signer agreement. I used some of that money to renovate the house, not because I wanted to live in it. I had no intention of moving back, but because I wanted to turn it into something completely mine. I repainted every wall, tore out the old carpet, updated the kitchen, and turned Ryan's old bedroom into a home office. When the renovations were done, I held a small housewarming party, just a few close friends, no family. We sat in the backyard with music playing, laughing, eating barbecue, the city lights glowing in the distance. At one point, one of my friends looked around and said, "This place feels like it was built for you." I smiled. "It wasn't," I said, "but it is now." Word got around town, of course. I heard through neighbors that my parents had moved into a small rental across the city. They still hadn't spoken to me again after that last phone call. Maybe they were embarrassed, maybe they were angry, maybe both. And honestly, I didn't care anymore because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't living under their shadow. I wasn't waiting for their approval or dodging their judgment. I was building something of my own, and it was stronger than anything they ever gave me. Months later, I drove past their old rental house on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Ryan was outside, this time wearing a plain work uniform, unloading tools from a truck that looked like it belonged to a construction company. He looked up and saw me driving by. Our eyes met for a split second. He didn't glare this time, he didn't smirk. He just nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible nod, and then he turned back to his work. I kept driving, a strange calm washing over me. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly, but it was something close. Back at my house, I walked into the kitchen, set my keys on the counter, and looked around at the space that was now completely, undeniably mine. And for the first time in what felt like years, I let out a deep, genuine laugh. Not because I was happy they had lost everything, but because I had finally taken everything back. My money, my future, my life. I stood there for a moment, smiling to myself, and whispered the words I'd wanted to say for months. This time, I'm not leaving. And with that, I closed the door behind me for good. Now on to the next story. Story 5. At my birthday dinner, my sister's daughter rolled her eyes and said, "Wow, still single at your age? That's sad." My mom just nodded. I smiled. That night, I called the bank. By 8:40 a.m., her debit card was frozen. My sister called me 31 times in desperation. I picked up the phone and she shouted, "How dare you?" This was the moment I almost exploded. It wasn't the first time they said something out of line. It wasn't even the worst thing they'd said, but something about it, the timing, the tone, the silence that followed, pushed me to the edge. It was my 30th birthday. I hadn't planned anything. My sister offered to host a dinner at my parents' house. Said it would be low-key and just family. I figured it would be easier than pushing back. That's always been my role anyway. The agreeable one. The one who doesn't argue. The one who shows up. The dining room was dim, warm, too quiet. My brother-in-law was already 2 beers deep before the food hit the table. He mumbled something about getting older and never looked up from his phone. My mom had made a pot roast and a cake, and my dad kept himself busy pretending to care about a baseball game in the next room. It was the kind of gathering where no one really wanted to be there, but we all did it because that's what family does. Ava sat across from me, still in her hoodie, tapping away on her phone. She didn't even look up when the cake came out. My mom lit the candles anyway and said something like, "Make a wish." I blew them out. Everyone clapped. Free, dry, unenthusiastic claps. Then Ava glanced up and said, "Wow, still single at your age. That's sad." My mom nodded. Just nodded like it was true. Like it was some inevitable disappointment I'd become. No one else said anything. My sister reached for her wine. My dad coughed. Her husband laughed under his breath. I smiled. I always smile. I cut myself a slice of cake. Said thank you. Pretended it was delicious. I helped clean the table afterward. I even hugged them all before leaving. But in my head, I was gone the second Ava opened her mouth. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't turn the lights on. I sat on the couch and stared out the window for almost an hour. I couldn't stop thinking about how many times I had helped that girl, Ava, when she was 15 and crying because her parents were screaming at each other again. Who picked her up and took her out for ice cream? Me. When she didn't get into her first choice college. Who stayed up proofreading her essays for the next round of applications? Me. Who pays half her tuition now every single month without ever being asked? Me. I've been the emotional support system for a family that never once offered me the same in return. My sister leans on me like I owe her something, like her life falling apart is somehow my responsibility. Her husband barely works and spends most of his day drinking. She says she's scared of him, but not enough to leave, not enough to stop defending him. And when she needs money, when he can't pay for groceries or gas, guess who gets the late-night texts? And I've never said no. Not once. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into the joint account I created to help cover Ava's college expenses. It had a good chunk sitting there, more than enough to get her through the next semester. She had a debit card tied to it. I called the bank. By 8:40 the next morning, her card was frozen. By 9:12, I had 17 missed calls. By 11 o'clock, it was 31. I finally answered. My sister didn't even breathe. She went straight into screaming. "How dare you? What the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't raise my voice. I just told her the truth. I said I wasn't interested in continuing to support people who didn't respect me. That I was done pretending I was part of something that only took from me. Then I hung up. She kept calling. Then came the texts, walls of them. At first, begging. Then blaming. Then threatening to tell our parents what I'd done. One of the last ones read, "You're destroying her future because you can't handle a joke. Pathetic." My dad tried calling the next day. Said we should meet, talk it out. I said I had plans, and I did. I was making a list every time I had to them. Every obligation, every single thing I did out of guilt or habit, and crossing them off one by one. They thought I wouldn't do it, that I'd get angry, then calm down like always, that I'd eventually send the money again. But this time was different. This time, something broke. And this time, I wasn't going to fix it. After that call, there was this strange, heavy silence. Not in the world, in me. I expected to feel guilty. I thought I might regret freezing Ava's card, cutting off that support so suddenly. But I didn't, not even a little. Instead, it felt like the first breath I'd taken in years. The texts from my sister didn't stop. She tried every angle. First, it was panic. Ava needs books. She has midterms. This will ruin her semester. Then, it turned to guilt. You promised to help, and you're better than this. And finally, rage. You're just bitter because no one wants you, and don't punish Ava for your lonely life. I didn't respond to any of it. I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I logged into the auto payment portal I'd set up for her car insurance, the one I'd been quietly covering for nearly a year. Canceled it. Then I called the advisor at Ava's university and removed myself from any financial responsibility. No more tuition payments, no more textbook money, no more backdoor favors or polite extensions through me. By the end of the day, the bridge was in flames. My phone rang nonstop. My sister, Ava, even my brother-in-law once, which was almost laughable. I didn't answer. Not until the next morning when I got a call from an unknown number I didn't recognize. It was Ava using someone else's phone. She didn't yell. She cried. Said she didn't understand what she did wrong. That she was just joking. That she didn't mean it like that. I didn't say much back. Just that maybe if she wanted to be treated like an adult, she should learn how to speak like one. Then I hung up. That same night, my sister showed up at my apartment. She didn't even knock at first. Just started banging on the door and yelling through it like a lunatic. My neighbor peeked out of his door, then closed it again without a word. I opened it barely. She shoved her way in. She didn't ask how I was or what was going on. She demanded to know when I was going to snap out of it. She called my reaction childish, vindictive, and completely out of proportion. She said I had no right to punish Ava for one comment. I asked her if she thought what Ava said was okay. She dodged the question, said it wasn't nice but she's just a kid. Then she asked the real question, the one she came for. So, are you paying tuition or not? I told her no. She laughed, actually laughed. Said I was being ridiculous. That Ava would have to drop out and it would be my fault. That's when I lost my patience. I told her that her entire household had been using me like a backup generator, that I was tired of being their emergency plan, that her drunk husband can figure out rent on his own for once, and that if she was really that worried about her daughter's education, maybe she should have saved instead of getting her nails done every 2 weeks and bailing him out of bar fights. She didn't like that. She said some things I won't repeat, then stormed out, slammed the door so hard the frame cracked. For a moment, I just stood there breathing. Then I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and looked around my apartment. It was quiet, peaceful, just mine. I hadn't felt that in a long time. Later that week, my mom called, said she wanted to talk, said she and Dad were coming over. I told them fine. One last meeting, one last explanation. But I already knew this time I wasn't going to be convinced. They rang the bell exactly at 4 o'clock, like it was some sort of scheduled intervention. My mom had a Tupperware of banana bread in her hands like she was bringing a peace offering. And my dad just stood behind her with his old baseball cap crumpled in one hand. Neither of them smiled. I let them in without saying much. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer coffee or water. I didn't pretend to be glad to see them. I think they noticed. My mom got right into it. Said she didn't understand what had gotten into me, that I was acting strange. Cold? She called it. Then she asked what this was all really about. Was I lonely, depressed, feeling the weight of turning 30? I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence sit for a minute. Then I told her this wasn't about a birthday. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a phase. She said Ava didn't mean what she said. That teenagers talk like that sometimes. That it wasn't personal. I asked why she nodded, why she didn't say anything at the table, why no one said anything. She gave that same tired excuse I've heard my whole life. I didn't want to make things uncomfortable at dinner. As if I hadn't been sitting there in full view, being humiliated, and not a single person had the decency to call it out. I looked at my dad hoping for something, anything, some sign that he got it. He didn't. He said, "You know how your sister is." There it was. The family motto, the phrase that had been used to excuse every guilt trip, every manipulation, every emotionally immature mess she created since we were kids. I said, "Yeah, I do. And I'm tired of pretending that makes it okay." They both went quiet for a while. My mom tried again. She softened her tone and said Ava was having a hard time, that she was stressed with school, homesick, overwhelmed, that freezing her card and pulling out of her tuition was a bit extreme. I asked her if she or my sister had offered to pay me back for any of it, even once. Books, housing, meals, car insurance, the thousands I'd already put in, the hours spent driving, the calls late at night when Ava didn't know how to handle her parents fighting again. She didn't answer. She just sighed and said, "Family takes care of each other." I said, "Yeah, they do, but I don't think that's what this has been." My dad tried to steer it back. Said, "Maybe I could just take a break. Skip this semester. Be back in next year." I told him there was no easing back in. This wasn't a timeout. This was a permanent change. My mom got quiet, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't used to me saying things like that. No one was. They were used to me helping, stepping in, carrying the weight. She asked, "So that's it? You're just done?" I said, "I'm not angry. I just don't want to live like this anymore." They didn't know what to do with that answer. They left after another 15 minutes of circling the same arguments. My mom hugged me stiffly like she was afraid I'd disappear. My dad mumbled something about keeping in touch and followed her out. The door closed behind them, and it was quiet again. A few hours later, I got a text from Ava. "So, you're really doing this?" I stared at it for a while. Then, I put my phone down and went back to the book I was reading. No reply, no explanation, no guilt, just peace. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. Because peace doesn't come that easy when people like them start losing their grip. 3 days went by, and for a second, it felt like maybe they'd finally gotten it. No calls, no angry texts, no sudden knock at my door. But with my family, silence was never surrender. It was the pause before another punch. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know from where. Then on day 4, I got an email from Ava's university. Apparently, she tried to apply for a private student loan using my name as the cosigner. She didn't ask, didn't even text me about it. Just typed my name into the form like I was still the same idiot who bailed her out of everything, like I wouldn't notice, like I wouldn't mind. The financial office flagged it immediately and reached out to confirm. I called them the second I read the email, told them I had no involvement, no agreement, no responsibility for any future debts. They were polite, professional, and clearly used to these kinds of situations. But even the woman on the phone paused for a beat when I said she didn't even tell me she was doing it. That same afternoon, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. It was Ava's roommate. She sounded tired. Said Ava was spiraling, crying, slamming doors, threatening to drop out. She didn't know what was going on. But Ava kept saying, "He's trying to ruin my life." That sentence landed weirdly. For years, I was the one person who never made things worse. I was the one they ran to when things fell apart. And now I was the villain because I decided I didn't want to be used anymore. Around 5 p.m., the texts started rolling in again. Ava first, "What is wrong with you? I'm your niece. You said you'd help me. You're punishing me for a joke." Then my sister, "You're crossing a line, Colton. She's just a kid. For God's sake, fix this today." And then, like a cherry on top, a message from her husband, the human paperweight. "You need to stop this. You think you're better than everyone, but you're not. You're just a pathetic loser with a bank account." That one actually made me laugh, but I was wrong about one thing. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. Then at 7:04 p.m., my phone rang again. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail again, but something told me to answer. It was my dad, but not from his number and not in his usual tone. He sounded softer, like he was choosing his words carefully. He told me he didn't want my mom to know he was calling. Said he'd been thinking a lot about what I said during the talk, about how things had been between us, between me and my sister for years, and for the first time in maybe ever, he admitted he hadn't handled it right, that he'd let things slide, that he'd stayed quiet too often, and that maybe now he was watching me do the thing he never could break away. He didn't ask me to go back on anything, didn't ask me to help Ava or call my sister. He just said he respected what I was doing, that it was probably long overdue. That call hit harder than all the others combined. We talked for about 20 minutes, mostly in between awkward silences, but by the end of it I didn't feel angry, just tired. I didn't expect him to become some kind of hero, but at least for once, he saw me. When I hung up, I sat in the dark with the TV off and just stared at nothing for a while. Then the next morning came. I was brushing my teeth when I heard the knock. No buzzing, no text, no warning, just a sharp, deliberate knock at the door. I assumed it was my sister again, or maybe Ava come to cry or shout or beg. I even considered not answering, but something about it felt different. It wasn't frantic or heavy. It was steady, controlled. When I looked through the peephole, it definitely wasn't Ava. It was a woman I didn't recognize. Late 20s, maybe, holding a folder. No clipboard, no badge. Not dressed like someone selling something or from a bank. She looked like she hadn't slept much, but there was a calmness about her that made me open the door. "You're Colton?" she asked. I nodded, keeping the door halfway closed. "I'm Kara. I work at the University Financial Aid Department." My first instinct was defensive. My stomach tightened. I was ready to explain again that I had removed myself from any financial obligation, that whatever Ava or my sister had told them, I wasn't part of it anymore. But then Kara said, "I'm not here for anything official. I just wanted to talk. Off the record." That threw me. She looked nervous but determined. Said she'd been the one who flagged Ava's emergency loan request. She noticed my name on the form and wanted to verify the cosigner. And when she saw there was no actual signature, she started digging. "Not in a creepy way," she added, almost embarrassed. "I just couldn't stop thinking about it." She told me she sees cases like this more than she'd like to admit. Students putting pressure on family members, parents forced into paying more than they can afford, silent donors with no voice. But there was something about this one, she said. The way Ava acted when she got the rejection, like she wasn't used to being told no. I nodded. That was accurate. Kara said she looked up my contact info on her own time. She probably wasn't supposed to, but she didn't care. I just felt like no one's ever on your side in these situations. And I guess I wanted to say I think you did the right thing. It was quiet for a moment. She shifted the folder under her arm and added, "Most people wouldn't have cut them off. Not after all they'd given. But it's not weakness to walk away. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do." Then, without any awkwardness, she said, "If you ever want to talk more or just grab a coffee or something, I'd be up for it." She gave me a small smile, not flirty, just real, and turned to leave. No pressure, no expectation, just kindness. I stood there for a while after the door closed. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone, anyone, to say I wasn't the villain. That walking away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. Later that afternoon, I sat with my phone in my hand, still thinking about her. And just when I was debating whether to send a message, it buzzed again. But it wasn't her. It was Ava. "They kicked me out of the dorm. I have nowhere to go. Mom's freaking out. Please call me." Then another, minutes later, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said at your birthday. I swear." And then a final one from my sister. "You've made your point. Now be a man and fix this." I stared at the screen for a long time. This was the moment I used to cave. The moment I'd step back in, make arrangements, smooth things over. But I didn't move because something had changed and I wasn't the same Colton they remembered anymore. I didn't reply to either of them. No dramatic message, no cold one-liner. I just put my phone down and let the weight of their words hang there without me carrying it this time. I went for a walk instead. Nothing special, just around the block, past the same coffee shop I usually pass without noticing. But this time I stopped. Kara was inside. She looked up from her laptop and gave me a quick smile, the kind you don't fake. I walked in, ordered a black coffee I barely tasted, and sat across from her. She didn't ask about the texts, didn't dig. We talked about music, stupid podcasts, books we hadn't finished. It wasn't a date. It wasn't anything official, but it was easy. After about an hour, I told her briefly about the messages I got that morning. I expected her to tilt her head or say something comforting. She just said, "You don't owe them anything." I nodded and we moved on. That night, I got one more text. "My sister again. You think this changes anything? You'll come crawling back like you always do. And when you do, don't expect us to forget this." That was the last message I ever got from her. And I never responded. In the weeks that followed, Ava dropped out. My sister tried to paint it as my fault to everyone who'd listen. My mom stayed quiet, probably embarrassed, but too stubborn to say it out loud. My dad texted me now and then. Short, cautious messages like he was learning how to be something other than silent. It was awkward, but I appreciated it. As for Kara, things grew slowly, naturally. I won't act like it was some fairy tale. We both had our own damage, our own complicated histories. But she was the first person in a long time who didn't need me to be the guy who fixes everything. She liked me without a ledger between us. The strange starting over this way. Not with some big life reset, not with a move to a new city or some dramatic goodbye, but with quiet boundaries and actual peace. I'm not saying I won't ever speak to my family again, but I'm not holding my breath either. Some people don't change. Some people just take until you have nothing left. And sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to finally stop being the safety net. This story doesn't end with revenge. It doesn't end with reconciliation either. It ends with me walking away for real this time and finding out what it means to live a life where I'm not the backup plan. Oh, and about Kara, let's just say I'm planning to post an update soon, but for the first time it's not because something fell apart. It's because something might finally be falling into place. The final update. As promised, here's the update. I said I'd share if something came of it. If things with Kara turned into more than just a good conversation and a little bit of hope, and they did. But first, let me be honest. I'm not doing great. That probably sounds strange after everything I wrote. Cutting ties, reclaiming my life, meeting someone new, and all of that is still true. But what no one tells you is that even when you make the right decisions, they can still gut you. Some mornings I wake up with this strange panic, like I forgot something, like I missed the deadline or skipped an important call. And then I realize no one's expecting anything from me. And that should feel good. But it doesn't. Not always. I've spent years being the guy who showed up, who cleaned up, who made it work. Now I have to unlearn that. And the silence is louder than I thought it would be. But here's the good news, and it is good. Kara and I are seeing each other. Not just coffee here and there. Actual plans, time spent. She came over last weekend and helped me put together a bookshelf I bought 3 months ago and never touched. We listened to records. She laughed at how terrible I am at following instructions. She's not in a rush. Neither am I. And that feels right. It's not fireworks and chaos. It's steady. It's kind. She knows about my family, about Ava, my sister, all of it. And she doesn't flinch. She listens. She stays. And for someone like me who spent most of his life bracing for disappointment, that feels like something worth protecting. No, I'm not doing perfectly. I still check my phone expecting more angry texts. I still think about Ava sometimes. I wonder how she's dealing with real consequences for the first time. I think about my sister and whether she still believes I'll eventually fold like I always did. But I don't respond. I don't reach out. I don't go back. That's the difference now. Kara told me something the other day that stuck. She said, "You've been the emergency contact for everyone else's chaos. Maybe it's time to be the main character in your own life." So yeah, as promised, here's the update. Something did come of it. And no, I'm not okay. Not completely. But I'm free. And that's better than I've been in a long time. Now on to the next story. Story 6. After months of funding their dream property, I got a text from my brother. "We're moving forward without you. This is family only." I didn't respond. I called my lawyer, notarized my withdrawal from the deal, and requested a freeze on the joint business line. By dawn, my inbox was full of legal threats and one message from my mom. "You're tearing this family apart." I smiled and replied. It didn't even make sense. I read it 3 times, waiting for my brain to fill in some missing context. Something that would make it not sound like a knife in the back. Just that smug little sentence from Tyler, my own brother, someone I had spent years propping up. Someone who, without me, would have been flat on his face a dozen times over. The betrayal wasn't even subtle, just a clean break. After 7 months of pouring money, time, and energy into our dream property, he decided I was no longer part of the dream. And that family line, that one hit different. It was like being thrown out of your own house while someone else stood at the door telling you it was for members only. What made it worse was that I could still hear his voice in my head, pitching the whole idea to me in the first place. The retreat center in upstate New York. Rustic cabins, creative workshops, guided hikes, a place for healing, he'd said, where we could build something together. He even called it our legacy. Now suddenly he was moving on without me. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I just sat still for a few minutes, then picked up the phone. Not to call Tyler, but my lawyer. Within 2 hours, I had a notarized withdrawal from the property deal. By midnight, I had filed to freeze the joint business line we'd been using to fund operations. That line existed because of my credit, my money. I started that LLC back when Tyler couldn't even open a checking account without overdrafting it. He didn't see it coming. The next morning, when he tried to use the card for a bulk materials order, it was declined. And suddenly, the guy who didn't have time to call me when he kicked me out of our own project was blowing up my phone. I didn't answer. I just watched the voicemails pile up. By noon, the panic had escalated into emails from some local lawyer named Brent, full of vague threats and dramatic demands to restore access. Tyler must have told him a very curated version of the truth because Brent seemed to think I was just some jealous investor with a grudge. I didn't even reply. Let them waste their retainer. Then came Mom. She started with guilt, then nostalgia, then tears. "This isn't like you," she wrote. "You're tearing this family apart." I didn't even get mad. I just replied, "No, Mom. I'm just finally walking away from the fire." She didn't answer that one. It was always the same pattern. Tyler would screw something up. I'd clean it up, and somehow I'd be the one people were mad at. Like when he dropped out of college and tried to flip used electronics online, then lost everything in 6 months. I paid off 42 grand of his debt. Not once did he say thank you. He just said, "You're the only one who believed in me." And then he asked for more. When he couldn't get a mortgage, I co-signed. That house he brags about online, the one with the backyard fire pit and the detached garage where he runs his little business. He only got it because I pushed $12,000 into his lap and told him not to screw it up. He did anyway, just not in the way I expected. He thought he could cut me out and I'd roll over. That I'd swallow the betrayal and come crawling back just to keep the peace. What he didn't get, what none of them ever got, was that peace isn't built on keeping toxic people comfortable. It's built on finally walking away from the chaos they create. And I wasn't done yet. Freezing the account was just step one. The rest was going to hit a lot harder. Tyler didn't take the silence well. He thought I was brooding, that I just needed time to cool off. What he didn't understand, what he never understood, was that silence for me wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. By the second day, the voicemails were unhinged. He went from pretending to be concerned to outright threatening me. "You're blowing this up for no reason. You want to lose everything, too? Keep going." I didn't answer. I saved the message. I was going to make sure every word was documented. Then came the emails. At first, all business. "Please reinstate the joint account immediately to prevent delays." Then came the guilt. "You've left us hanging, man. This isn't just about you." And when I didn't reply, the manipulation kicked in. "I told Mom." "She's devastated. You should call her." Instead, I called the supplier. I let them know I was no longer attached to the business. I told them Tyler was acting without authorization and to be cautious about extending any more credit. They weren't surprised. He had already missed one payment and was trying to delay the next. I removed my guarantee. That door slammed shut. The next morning, he tried to place a large materials order and his card was declined. He found out about the freeze the hard way. I know because he sent me one message, just one. In all caps, "What did you do?" I didn't respond. I was busy taking back everything with my name on it. The domain for our business, I owned it. The hosting, also me. The SEO contract, the photography rights, even the booking software we had integrated into the retreats website. It all ran through accounts I had created and paid for. I waited until he started promoting the summer opening before I pulled it offline. The website went dark without warning. And then I redirected the domain to a blank page with a single line. "Under legal dispute, check back never." He must have nearly choked when he saw that. I got calls from a few mutual acquaintances, people who had no idea what was happening and assumed I was pulling some kind of stunt. One even told me Tyler said I had abandoned the project because I couldn't handle the pressure. I let him talk. Let them all talk. The real pressure hadn't even started yet. That night, Mom showed up. I didn't answer the door. She stood outside my building for 15 minutes, buzzing the intercom, calling my phone, then slipping a folded note into my mailbox. I watched from my kitchen window as she drove off. I didn't read the note. I didn't need to. It was always the same. Somehow Tyler would be the one who tried to make peace and I'd be the one holding a grudge. The thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. I was done cleaning up after people who dragged their mess into my life and expected me to say thank you for the privilege. I wasn't trying to destroy Tyler. I was just removing myself from the structure he built on my back. And he still didn't get it. He tried to file for a business development grant using our old LLC credentials. Credentials that no longer existed because I had formally deactivated the company 2 days earlier. He didn't know that yet. The grant application bounced. The agency flagged it for a mismatch in tax IDs and contacted the state for verification. Within 24 hours, he was locked out of 2 accounts, one for his business insurance, the other for the merchant processor we used. They both required verification from both registered owners, and I was no longer one of them. He texted again, just one word this time. Seriously? Yeah, seriously. And we were just getting started. By Friday, I knew the panic had officially set in. Tyler had always been slippery, smooth-talking, good at playing calm even when everything was falling apart. But I could tell he was unraveling. The signs were everywhere. Misspelled texts, rapid-fire voicemails, desperate emails with subject lines like, "Let's talk this out," and "You're taking this too far." The thing is, I hadn't done anything rash. I hadn't gone scorched earth. I hadn't posted online or called in favors or aired our drama in public. All I'd done was remove what I built from under his feet, quietly, cleanly, legally, and now he was flailing. That afternoon, he showed up in person at my office. I saw him through the security feed, standing in the lobby with his hands in his pockets, trying to look composed. My assistant buzzed me and said, "Your brother's downstairs. Says it's important." I told her to ask him to leave. She did. He waited exactly 6 minutes, then left without a word. I didn't need to see him. I already knew what he wanted. By that evening, I got an email from a new lawyer. Not Brent. This one had a fancier letterhead, but the same weak teeth. They threatened legal action unless I restored access to the business accounts, reversed the LLC closure, and handed over all branding rights, claiming I was acting in bad faith and violating verbal agreements. My attorney sent a single sentence in response. "Our client is under no legal or financial obligation to subsidize mismanagement and entitlement." The next day, things escalated. Tyler had tried to push a zoning application through the city office for construction on the retreat land. He forged a document that made it seem like I had agreed to transfer development rights to him. What he didn't know was that the planning department still had my number listed as the primary contact. They called me directly. I asked them to forward the application, reviewed it, and then submitted a formal fraud notification along with my rescind letter and proof of my withdrawal. The application was flagged for investigation and shelved indefinitely. So much for moving forward without me. By Sunday, the whispers started. Family members I hadn't heard from in months suddenly felt the urge to check in. My aunt wanted to know why I was being so cold. A cousin sent a cryptic message. "He's not perfect, but he's your brother." My inbox started to fill with reminders of how we used to be close and how Mom's worried sick. Then Amber called. She tried to keep it neutral, but I could hear the undertone. "He's not in a good place, Matt. You know, he's got a lot tied up in this." I didn't respond at first. She waited. Then she said, "I just think you should talk to him. That's all. You two built something incredible together. Don't throw it away." And there it was. That same old line that I was breaking something we both created. But the truth was there never was a we. There was me taking meetings, building decks, negotiating contracts, fronting cash. Tyler showed up for photo ops and posted inspirational quotes on our social media pages. That was the extent of his contribution. He never once stayed up till 3 a.m. fixing a spreadsheet that didn't reconcile. Never sat in front of a blank business plan wondering how to make it all work. Never risked his personal credit to float us through the slow season. The retreat wasn't our legacy. It was mine, and he was lucky to be attached to it for as long as he was. The part Tyler hadn't figured out yet was that I'd already started something new. A better location, a tighter plan, clean branding without the baggage of his name attached. I'd already filed the LLC solo ownership. The first deposit on the land was done. Construction team lined up. No public fanfare, no posts, just progress. Tyler was busy scrambling, trying to keep the illusion alive. He didn't know it was already dead. His version of success, built on my backing and his own inflated sense of importance, had finally collapsed under its own weight. And now I was out. Not angry, not even vindictive, just free. By the middle of the next week, the silence on my end was starting to make waves on his. Tyler had stopped contacting me directly, probably because every time he tried, I either ignored him or let my lawyer handle it with clinical indifference. That's when he switched tactics. He didn't come at me, he tried to circle around me. It started with a visit to my dad. Now, my dad and I weren't especially close. Divorced when we were kids, lived a few towns over, remarried, quiet guy. But Tyler figured he could win him over. He pitched some story about how I was tearing the family apart and destroying everything we worked for. What he didn't know was that Dad didn't owe him anything. In fact, Dad pulled me aside once at a family barbecue and said that kid always acted like he was owed the world. And that was when Tyler was 19. So when Tyler showed up at his door with the sad eyes and half-truths, Dad told him something simple. If Matt cut you off, you probably earned it. Tyler left after 15 minutes. Then something happened that I didn't expect. I got a message from one of our former suppliers, a woman named Julia who ran a small reclaimed wood shop we used for the retreat's aesthetic. She told me Tyler had tried to place a large order under our old company name, promising Matt will clear the invoice. She'd already declined it but wanted to give me a heads up. Said something about how Tyler seemed off, desperate. That's when I realized he wasn't just spiraling. He was trying to rebuild the whole project without me, without money, and using my name like a key to doors that were now locked. And then something even stranger. I got a call from a guy named Roman. I didn't recognize the name at first. He explained he was a private investor who Tyler had reached out to, offering him a chance to buy into a lakeside retreat that was nearly complete. Roman asked if I was still involved because Tyler had dropped my name several times during the pitch. That was bold. He didn't just try to cut me out. He was using my reputation to attract new money, pretending the project was still ours, still stable. Roman told me the deal seemed fishy. He's sweating, man, he said, trying to move fast, but the details don't line up. Something felt off. Then I Googled you. I thanked him and asked if he'd be willing to forward the proposal Tyler sent. He did. I printed it and handed it straight to my lawyer. What Tyler didn't know was that using my name and likeness without permission, especially to solicit investment, was a huge legal misstep. I had him dead to rights. The legal notice we sent that afternoon was worded carefully. A cease and desist letter, along with a formal warning that any further use of my identity or association with the business would result in immediate legal action. I knew it would land hard. He couldn't run the con anymore. But the fallout wasn't just legal. That same night, Mom called. This time, she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just said, "He's in trouble. He's talking about selling the house. The house I helped him buy. Apparently, he tried to refinance and couldn't qualify. He was running out of options. Investors were backing off. The website was gone. The retreat was no longer on the map, and all that was left was the wreckage of a life he built on someone else's foundation." I asked her, "And what exactly do you want me to do about it?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that stuck with me. "You used to be his anchor. Now he's drifting." I didn't say what I was thinking. That anchors only drag you down if you let them. Tyler wasn't drifting. He was sinking, and I wasn't about to dive in after him. A week after the cease and desist landed, the unraveling picked up speed. Tyler had gone quiet. Not silent, just quiet. The kind of quiet that meant he was either scheming or spiraling. I didn't care which. I'd cut off every financial tie, scrubbed our names off everything we ever built together, and moved on to the new project like he never existed. But Tyler wasn't done. One morning, I got a notification from a name I hadn't seen in years. Jason Farrell. Back in the early days of our business, Jason had been our go-to contractor until Tyler pushed him out over a pricing dispute. I opened the message expecting something random. Instead, it said, "Hey, just got a strange call. Your brother offered me a cut of a new build. Said you were still involved." Sounded shady. Thought you should know. I stared at the screen for a second. Tyler was still trying to dig his way back into my shadow, still using my name like a master key. I forwarded the message to my lawyer, told him to update the enforcement notice. That afternoon, something hit that even I didn't see coming. Tyler posted a video. He went live on social media, standing on the porch of the unfinished retreat house. He framed it like a behind-the-scenes update, but the whole thing was a thinly veiled attack. Said vague things about being betrayed by someone close and how certain people don't want to see you succeed. He never said my name, but every single comment did. My phone started lighting up. Friends, clients, even a few old partners messaging me asking what was going on. I watched the whole thing start to finish and just shook my head. He looked exhausted, sweaty, rambling. He even pointed to the empty cabin behind him like it was some kind of achievement. What he didn't know was that 2 days earlier, I had made a quiet call to the county. I had flagged the property for abandoned construction, something they take very seriously in our area. Without a valid permit and with no inspections passed in over 90 days, the county had the right to post a stop work order. And that's exactly what they did. 2 days after his live stream, someone sent me a photo. A red sign nailed to the retreat's front gate. Work halted, pending review. The final blow. And then it got quiet again. This time, the kind of quiet I knew. The kind that comes when someone realizes they've finally run out of exits. No more business account. No permits, no funding, no family handouts, just consequences. 3 nights later, Mom showed up again. No warning, just buzzed the intercom at 9 p.m. I didn't answer. She waited 5 minutes, then left a voicemail. He's selling the house. I already knew. A friend in real estate told me it hit the listings that morning. Price low. Urgent. He was trying to offload it before foreclosure took it from him. She ended the message with, "You have to at least talk to him. You're both my sons." That was the last thing she ever said to me because the next morning, I blocked her number. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. They hadn't just let Tyler drain me for years. They handed him the cup. Every time I set a boundary, they broke it for him. Every time I gave in, they acted like I owed it to him. But not this time. This time the boundary held and, one by one, I started shutting every door. The house sold for less than what he owed. I knew it before the listing was even taken down. A quiet source, someone in real estate I'd helped out years ago, messaged me out of the blue. Tyler's place went fast. Undervalued. Looks like a fire sale. There was no press release, no dramatic post, just a single story on his profile with a caption, "Onward," and a photo of his belongings crammed into a storage unit. It got a dozen sympathy replies, people telling him to keep pushing and stay strong, as if his whole mess was just bad luck. He never said my name, but I could see the pattern. He was trying to spin the story again, frame himself as the one rebuilding after being betrayed, like he hadn't been the one holding the match when everything burned down. And then it happened. I got one last email, not from Tyler, from some lawyer I'd never heard of, his third or fourth by now. The tone was different. It wasn't aggressive like the others. It was vague and meandering. Buried in the legal lingo was what sounded like a plea that we return to negotiations, that I consider an equitable solution, that perhaps we could meet in good faith. It was laughable. There was no equity left to divide. Nothing to negotiate. He'd lost the property. The business was dissolved. The brand was offline. The suppliers had moved on. There was no we anymore. There hadn't been for a long time. My lawyer didn't even bother replying. That was the final straw for me. I opened my phone and scrolled through my blocked numbers list. Tyler's was already there. But I wasn't done. Mom's number blocked. Her endless guilt messages. Her silence when Tyler crossed lines. Her refusal to hold him accountable. Gone. And Sharon blocked. She called me 3 times after the house sold, each time opening with, "You've made your point. Now come home." I don't know what home she was referring to. The one where I was used like a wallet with legs. Not interested. Cousin Lucas, Cousin Rachel, even my uncle who'd once called Tyler the entrepreneur of the family. While I was sitting right there, blocked. 6 names, 6 exits. It didn't feel dramatic. Felt overdue. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No more phone vibrations in the middle of dinner. No more long texts pretending to be apologies that pivoted into blame. No more strings to untangle. I was finally out. A few weeks later, I got a call from the builder at my new property. The second cabin was ahead of schedule. The trails were cut. The deck overlooking the water was finished, and they just installed the wood-burning stove I'd wanted from day one. I drove up 2 days later to see it in person. The air was cold and quiet, the sun low, the lake perfectly still. And for the first time in years, my name was the only one on the deed. No drama, no interference, no one leeching off the dream. Just me standing on land I owned, on a project I built with my own time, money, and grit. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt done. Tyler's still out there somewhere. Last I heard, he was renting a one-bedroom in a city he used to mock for being too slow. He tried starting another side hustle, selling refurbished patio furniture, posted some grainy video about turning pain into purpose. A few people liked it. A few left comments. I didn't watch the whole thing. I don't hate him. I just don't know him anymore. He had a dozen chances to do right, to partner honestly, to respect what I gave. And every single time, he chose himself. That's not family. That's just someone using the word to keep their foot in the door. Now the door is closed, and it's going to stay that way. It's been exactly 6 months since I blocked them. No unblocks, no slip-ups, no curiosity late at night that made me scroll through their profiles. Just quiet. The new retreat is fully booked for the season. 3 cabins, a main lodge, and a staff of 5, every one of them handpicked. People who show up, do the work, and don't try to take more than they give. I didn't build it to prove a point. I built it because I finally had the space to do something without constantly managing someone else's damage. A few weeks ago, I got a letter forwarded to my new business address. No return address. Handwritten. I recognized the scrawl immediately. It was from Tyler. I didn't open it. I burned it in the fire pit behind the main lodge. Not out of spite, out of peace. Some bridges don't need walking. They need leaving. And I've already walked far enough. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Your ticket was canceled, said the man at the airport. Later, I received an SMS. We don't need you, wrote stepmom. I called my dad, but he didn't answer. A week later, when they returned, I could already picture the warm beaches, the sound of the ocean, and a week without worrying about bills or work. My dad had invited me on this trip to Hawaii, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt like things might be getting better between us. I showed up at the airport, walked up to the check-in counter, handed over my ID, and waited for my boarding pass. The lady behind the counter frowned at her screen, typed something, and then looked at me. Your ticket has been canceled. I let out a short laugh. That must be a mistake. My dad booked it. She checked again. No, it was canceled this morning. You'll have to talk to the person who booked it. I stepped back, my mind racing. My first thought was that there had to be some kind of mix-up. Maybe my father had rebooked me on another flight. Maybe there was a scheduling problem. Then, my phone buzzed. A text message from Melissa. We don't need you, she wrote. Enjoy your little apartment. I just stared at the screen. It didn't make any sense. My heart was pounding and my fingers felt numb. I hit call, no answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I tried texting my dad. Call me. What's up? Nothing. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. They had planned this. Melissa never wanted me there. She just had my dad invite me, probably just to mess with me. And my dad, he let it happen. He had booked me a ticket, promised me a trip, and then, just like that, allowed her to take it away. I turned and walked out of the airport, my head spinning. A mixture of anger, humiliation, and disbelief washed over me all at once. I thought about the last few years since my dad had married Melissa. Things had gone downhill fast. She had 2 children, 9-year-old twins, Max and Jake, and from the moment they moved in, my life had changed. At first, I tried to be civil. I wanted to make it work, But Melissa made sure I was nothing more than free labor in my own home. If she needed someone to watch the kids, that was my job. If they made a mess, I had to clean it up. And if I said no, I was ungrateful, selfish, or lazy. Every little thing turned into a fight, and my father always took their side. I tried to hold on for a while, thinking maybe things would calm down, but they didn't. It just got worse. As soon as I could afford it, I moved to a small, crappy apartment across town. It wasn't much, but at least it was mine. The only person I kept in touch with was my father. Melissa acted like I didn't exist, except when she needed me to watch the twins. Then suddenly I was part of the family again. And now this? They made me believe things would get better. They made me think, just for a second, that maybe I still mattered to my dad. Then they ripped it all away just to watch me fall. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Melissa. Stop calling. Dad's busy. Move on. I gritted my teeth and shoved the phone into my pocket. They thought I was useless. Now that's why they did this. They didn't need me for anything right now, so they threw me away like garbage. But they would need me again. They always did. And I would be ready. I sat in the back of the cab, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles were white. The driver looked at me in the mirror but didn't say anything. He was probably used to seeing angry passengers. Couldn't believe it. They had actually done this to me. My dad had let this happen. I pulled up my phone again and stared at the latest message from Melissa. We don't need you. Enjoy your little apartment. The words were burned into my brain. I wanted to call again to demand an explanation, but I knew I wouldn't get one. If my father had wanted to explain, he would have picked up the phone. Instead, he let her do it. I wasn't even worth talking to. The anger in my chest only grew. I thought about how many times I had helped them, how many times they had dumped Max and Jake on me, expecting me to drop everything. They always made it seem like I had no choice, like I owed them. But now, suddenly, I was nothing to them. I looked out the window, barely paying attention to where the cab was taking me. I had just enough money to get home, and the thought of walking into my tiny apartment alone, broke and betrayed, made me sick. I thought of all the times Melissa had used me. Like when she and my dad wanted to go on a date and she called me, pretending to be nice. Oh, Alan, we'd love for you to spend some time with your brothers. Brothers, that's what she called them, as if we were actually related. And if I said no, then I got the guilt trip. Your dad works so hard for you and you can't even do this one thing for him? Every time I gave in because I didn't want to be the bad guy, because I thought if I just went along with it, maybe things would get better. What a joke. By the time the cab pulled up to my apartment, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to answer when Melissa called. And when, not if, they needed something from me again, I wasn't going to be there. I slammed the door behind me and threw my bag on the couch. The room was silent except for the faint hum of my refrigerator. Then I smiled to myself. Melissa thought she had one. She thought she had finally shut me out for good. But I knew her. They were going to Hawaii, spending money they didn't have, pretending to be a perfect, happy family. But eventually, reality would set in. And when it did, I wanted to be there to watch them fall. So I waited. A week passed. I went to work, kept my phone on silent, and ignored the tiny glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, my dad would reach out. He didn't. Then, on the 10th day, my phone buzzed. Melissa's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. She called again, then a third time. Then my dad's name came up. I took a deep breath before I answered. Alan? My dad said. His voice sounded distant, worried. We need to talk. I leaned back against the couch, letting the silence stretch. My dad had finally called. A week ago, they had dumped me like trash. Now, suddenly, they needed to talk? I wasn't about to make this easy for him. What's up? I asked, keeping my voice flat. There was a pause. Listen, son, we have a bit of a problem. I almost laughed. Of course they did. Yeah, he sighed. Can you come by the house? It's important. I had half a mind to tell him to screw off, but something in his voice made me curious. This wasn't just them calling to pretend to care. Something was wrong. Fine, I said. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up before he could say anything else. When I pulled up to the house, the first thing I noticed was how messy it looked. The curtains were drawn and the lawn was overgrown, like no one had touched it in weeks. That was strange. Melissa ran this house like a dictator. Everything had to be spotless. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Finally, the door cracked open and Melissa stood there, but she didn't look like herself. Her hair was a mess and she wasn't wearing any makeup. For the first time ever, she actually looked tired. "Come in," she muttered, stepping aside. Inside, the house was a disaster. Dishes piled up in the sink, toys scattered everywhere, and a weird smell lingered in the air. It was nothing like the spotless home I remembered. I turned to my dad, who was sitting at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples. He looked years older than when I last saw him. "All right?" I said, crossing my arms. "What's this about?" Dad glanced at Melissa, and she sighed heavily before speaking. "We got robbed." I raised an eyebrow. "Robbed?" She nodded. "Someone broke in while we were in Hawaii, took cash, jewelry, and my phone." I frowned. Why was there cash in the house? Dad let out a long breath. We were keeping some aside, a lot actually, for bills. And now it's gone." I almost laughed. They had money problems before, but this was next level. "That sucks," I said, shrugging. "What do you want me to do about it?" Melissa narrowed her eyes. "You could show some sympathy." I gave her a look. "Sympathy after what they did to me? Did you call the cops?" I asked. Dad nodded. "Yeah, but there's not much they can do. No cameras, no witnesses. We're screwed." Melissa took a deep breath and folded her arms. "We need help, Alan." I waited, letting the silence hang in the air. Then it clicked. They weren't just telling me this for fun. They were asking for money. A week ago, I wasn't even worth a damn plane ticket. Now they were looking at me like I was their last hope. Unbelievable. I let out a short laugh. "You're serious? After everything, you're coming to me for money?" Dad shifted in his seat, avoiding my eyes. Melissa clenched her jaw. "Look, we wouldn't be asking if we had another option." "Well, you do," I said. "Get jobs." Melissa's face turned red. "You little—" Dad put a hand on her arm, stopping her. "Alan, please. We're in a tough spot." I just stared at them. This was karma punching them right in the face. I could have left right then and there. I should have. But something in me wanted to see just how desperate they'd get. So I kept my expression neutral and said, "I'll think about it." Melissa exhaled sharply, like she wanted to scream at me. Dad just nodded, probably relieved that I didn't say no outright. "Fine," Melissa snapped. "But don't take too long. We don't have time to waste." I smirked. Oh, this was going to be fun. I walked out of their house with a grin I couldn't hide. Melissa looked like she wanted to throw something at my head. And my dad? Well, he was too tired to even argue. They were desperate, and I wasn't going to make this easy for them. I took my time thinking about it. A day passed, then another. I ignored their texts, let their calls go to voicemail. If they were struggling, good. Let them sweat. Then, on the third day, something unexpected happened. I got home from work late, grabbed some takeout on the way, and was just about to dig in when there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked my phone, no missed calls. Another knock, louder. I sighed, got up, and opened the door. It was my dad, and he looked bad. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and his face was pale, like he hadn't slept in days. I'd never seen him like this before. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, still trying to process the fact that he was actually here. He walked in, glanced around my tiny apartment, and sat down on the couch. He didn't say anything at first, just rubbed his hands together like he was working up to something. "Dad, what's going on?" I finally asked. He let out a slow breath. "I lost my job." That caught me off guard. "You what?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Got back from Hawaii, went in the next day, and they let me go. Cutbacks." I blinked. "So, wait. You came to me for money knowing you were already broke?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I let out a short laugh. Wow. So you guys went to Hawaii knowing you couldn't afford it, and now you expect me to clean up the mess? His face twisted. Melissa didn't know. I frowned. What? He sighed. I didn't tell her. I don't know. I thought I could figure something out when we got back. But now, with the robbery and everything else, we're screwed. I sat back, letting that sink in. So not only was Melissa panicking about the robbery, but she didn't even know that my dad had lost his job? This just kept getting better and better. So, what do you want from me? I asked, crossing my arms. He hesitated. Just a loan to keep things steady for a while, until I find something else. I tilted my head. And Melissa? She know you're here. He looked down. No. I stared at him, almost impressed. The same man who had let Melissa control everything was now sneaking behind her back to ask me for help, and he didn't even realize how pathetic that was. I let out a breath and stood up. Look, Dad. I don't have the money to bail you out. That was a lie. I did have some savings, but there was no way in hell I was giving him a cent. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he actually looked ashamed. I get it. I walked him to the door. Good luck, I said. He gave me a small nod, then left without another word. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed my phone and waited, because I knew one thing for sure. Melissa was going to find out, and when she did, it was going to be glorious. I barely had time to grab my morning coffee before my phone exploded with notifications. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and an angry text from Melissa. You think you're smart, huh? You think you can play games with us? You have no idea what you've done. I smirked. Oh, this was going to be good. I took my time, made breakfast, and finally hit play on the first voicemail. At first, all I could hear was static and heavy breathing. Then, Melissa's voice came through, shaking with anger. You think this is funny? Your father lied to me. I just found out he lost his damn job, and now we have nothing. Nothing, Alan. And you knew, didn't you? You let me beg you for money while you sat there laughing. I actually laughed out loud. That was better than I expected. I played the second voicemail. You're a selfish little bastard after all we did for you. I skipped the rest. Then the third voicemail. This time it was my dad. His voice was quiet, tired. Alan, I don't know what to say. Melissa is angry. She left. I froze. What? I played the message back to make sure I heard it right. Melissa left? That wasn't part of the plan. I expected her to yell at me, threaten me, maybe even show up at my door with more demands. But leaving? I never thought she'd actually leave. I called my dad back and he picked up right away. It's over, he said. What do you mean? He sighed, sounding like he hadn't slept all night. She packed a bag, took the twins, said she's staying with her sister. I don't know if she's coming back. I stared at the wall, trying to process. Melissa was gone. I wasn't sure how I should feel. On the one hand, it was exactly what she deserved. She had spent years making my life miserable, turning my dad against me, using me like a free babysitter. Now she had nothing. But on the other hand, this wasn't just a tantrum. She really left. What are you going to do? I asked. Dad took a slow, shaky breath. I don't know. For the first time in years, he sounded completely lost. No Melissa to boss him around, no twins to take care of, no family under his roof. Just him, alone in that big, messy house. And me? I didn't feel sorry for him, not even a little. That was the mess he made, and now he was finally going to live in it. Over the next few days, I expected Melissa to call again. Maybe to yell, maybe to demand that I fix what I started. Maybe to gloat that she and my dad were back together and I was still the villain in her story. But she didn't. Instead, my dad kept calling. I ignored the first few, but eventually, curiosity got the better of me. When I finally answered, he sounded different. Not angry, not desperate, just empty. Hey, Alan, he said, his voice hollow. Can we talk? I hesitated, but sighed. Yeah, sure. He asked me to meet him at a diner near my place. That was weird. He never came to my side of town. When I got there, he was already sitting in a booth, stirring a cup of coffee, staring at nothing. He looked exhausted, like he had aged 10 years in a week. I slid into the seat across from him. "All right, what's up?" He rubbed his face and took a long breath. "Melissa's not coming back." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She's done. I talked to her last night and she said she's moving out for good. She's taking the kids, too." I blinked. Melissa actually left him? I mean, I knew they were a mess. I knew she was angry when she found out about the job and the money, but I figured she'd come crawling back once she realized she couldn't support herself. But no, she was really gone. And for the first time, my dad had no one. I watched him for a moment. He wasn't the same man who used to blindly defend her. He looked completely lost. "So," I said carefully, "what do you want from me?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Nothing." I didn't believe him. "Come on, Dad. Every time you call you want something." But he shook his head. "Not this time." He looked down at his coffee as if he didn't know how to say what he was thinking. Then he sighed. "I screwed up, Alan. I didn't say anything. I let her control everything," he admitted. "I let her push you out of the family, and I just let it happen." He looked up at me, guilt written all over his face. "And now I don't have a family anymore." I swallowed, taken completely by surprise. My dad wasn't the type to admit things. He never owned up to anything. He always found a way to pass the buck. But now he actually said it. He knew he screwed up. I should have been satisfied. That was what I wanted, right? For him to realize how much he hurt me. But instead, I just felt strange. "You made your choice," I finally said. "You let them treat me like garbage for years, Dad." "I tried. I really did. But you always supported her." He nodded slowly, as if he already knew what I was going to say. "I know. And I'm sorry." I sat back and stared at him. The man who had always chosen her over me. The man who had let me walk away without a second thought. And now he was here, alone, apologizing. I didn't know what to do. I expected a fight. I expected him to argue, to beg, to apologize. But instead, he just sat there, defeated. And for the first time in my life, I saw my father not as a towering figure in control, but as a man who had lost everything. And somehow that was worse. Time passed. My dad and I weren't exactly close, but things had changed. He was still struggling, still trying to pick up the pieces of his shattered life, and somehow I was still there to watch. Then one night I got a call from him. It was late, too late for casual conversation. I hesitated but answered anyway. "Dad." He sounded completely exhausted. "She says she's pregnant." I sat up. "What?" "Melissa," he mumbled. "She called me today. Said she's pregnant." I almost laughed. "Are you kidding me?" "No," he said, sounding just as tired as before. "And she's already talking about child support." I rubbed my temple. Of course she was. "Is there any proof?" I asked. He hesitated. "No. She just said it. Said she found out after she left. But she won't show me anything. No ultrasound, no tests, nothing." I sat back. This was classic Melissa. She must have realized she wasn't going to get a dime out of him. So she pulled out her last desperate card. "You know she's lying, right?" I said. He let out a shaky breath. "I don't know anymore, Alan." That took me by surprise. I had never heard my father sound so broken. Melissa had taken everything from him. His money, his house, his pride, and now she was coming back for what little control she had left. And for some reason, I actually felt sorry for him. After everything he'd done to me, after years of putting her before me, I still couldn't ignore him because, no matter what, he was still my father and he was finally seeing her for who she really was. I let out a long sigh. "All right," I said. "We'll figure this out." He was silent for a second. Then he said, "We." I didn't answer right away because I wasn't sure why I was saying it. But yes, we. Maybe I was stupid. Maybe I was soft. Maybe I just wasn't ready to see him get crushed again. All I knew was that, for the first time in a long time, my dad actually needed me. And this time, I wasn't going to walk away. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.